and I might use this.
Good stuff. Right, saying we're live. I'll just wait for YouTube and Twitch to match that claim. We're live on YouTube, and we are live on Twitch. Marvellous.
2 for 2.
Look at that. Two months in a row now. This has just worked. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the last Friday of the month and the ID update. We've got, I think, what will be quite an interesting show today, actually.
I would agree.
We've not got loads of news. I think that's, I think certainly over here, a lot of the news is being held till like next week because it's Learning Tech in the UK next week, the big conference. So a lot of the big players are kind of teasing, we're going to announce something big. I mean, it's learning, so nothing's going to change that much. But
Right.
I'm sure it's very important to them, whatever they're going to announce.
Yeah.
So
Isn't
yeah,
that what it always is?
Exactly.
It's always the most important. Everybody's is the most important.
That's it. But yeah, in today's episode, we are going to be talking, as was requested last time, actually, about kind of data and ethics in the L&D world, and I know that's going to touch on kind of the AI side of things as well, and then kind of like a bit of a different topic for us is kind of burnout, workplace trauma, and the culture of working in learning and development, which I think will be interesting. Yeah.
I did a thing. Not for this, but I made a post and it sparked the conversation.
Absolutely. And yeah, we're going to get into all of that. But first and foremost, we are, of course, going to roll that intro. There's only one place for the breaking news in the world of instructional design. The ID Update with Tom and Joe. All the news you never knew you never needed. Only on IDT. There we go.
All right, so, I have to say, all right, let's do a shout out because we have so many instances where we are not sponsored by somebody. And this is Melon. This is Melon, right?
Yes.
So fun fact for everybody, every time we do these, the last 13, 14, 15 times we've done this, we did this through Discord, and then Tom used, I think he used Streamlabs, which means that I never get to watch our intro. I just have to accept that it exists in the background. So now that we're on Melon, I finally get to see what the show looks like with our intro in it.
It is, I must admit, and it's a lot easier doing this now that I can see you. Because before that, we couldn't do that either.
Couldn't do that. And you were always on like a 3-second delay in Discord and a 10-second delay in YouTube.
That's it.
This is so much easier.
If you're going to live stream, melonapp.com. Melon as in the fruit. It is fantastic. And very reasonably priced, I must say. It's a great bit of kit. Hi, Linnea. Thanks for joining us.
Hello.
Since you finally made a live episode, welcome. It's an interesting episode to be the first episode that you make live. We're not being overly positive this month, I think, is the general theme.
I think we'll find it. It's going to be a matter of finding a spin to it. Drinking a Coke. Absolutely. Well, we will enjoy the whiskey.
There we go.
No, I'm not enjoying whiskey. I'm in fact kind of funny that we're talking about like L&D or like an L&D conference where they think their stuff is cool, and I've got my beer is called Chasing Waterfalls.
Love it.
Which just happens to work that way. Out of WeldWorks, I think I've brought WeldWorks on this before. They're out of Greeley, Colorado. They have no business being as good as they are. Greeley, Colorado is where our farming, all of our like farms and cattles are done. So like it smells like crap. But you have some of the best breweries in Colorado out there. So whatever. But as I always do, I bring a glass as well. And this one's really cool. I don't know if you can see. We'll see how much of this you can see. So every year, Colorado has a craft beer day. And they always make a special glass for it. So this is the one from this year, which is really cool. Last year was a fish. I don't know why. Mr. Suarez, hello, hello. Good afternoon.
Hello, how are you doing? So, I'm not going to lie, I sort of cheated. It got to, I would like to say, like 7:45. What I mean is just about 7 o'clock. And I decided it was time to have a beer. So I've currently got a Baltic Porter, and it is delicious. And for a glass, I obviously have the ID update glass,
That's
which
right. The
you too
thing.
can own by the link in the comments. But I also have, because I always end up having another one, I have a dark vanilla porter
Ooh.
from Funnel Blower, which is kind of like a railway themed brewery.
Huh.
And what I really like about their beers is they are steam infused.
Steam
So that,
infused.
yes, so they make a really nice, in this instance, a dark porter. And rather than just dumping effectively vanilla flavoring into beer, which it can work, but you always get that slightly metallic addition to the flavoring, right? When they pump in a load of fake flavor.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
So what they do is they pump steam through their beer during the brewing process with vanilla in it.
Huh. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting way of getting flavor into beer without adding non-beer ingredients, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I totally get it.
Because if everything like vanilla and fruit or whatever else you dump in there affects the fermentation process in some way, whether it thickens the beer, thins the beer, makes the beer sweeter, less sweet, whatever. This way, you get the flavour without actually impacting in any way the gravity or the mouthfeel or any of that.
I like it. It's
It's
awesome.
it's interesting.
Nice. Well, oh, actually, said this is an IPA, by the way,
Nice.
because that's what we do.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yes.
cool. Well,
I think
cheers to
I'm.
you guys. Thank you for joining us. Also, cheers to the next 13 subscribers to Instructional Design Tips to get Tom to that ever wonderful 1,000. Um,
We would
that
probably have got that this month had I published any content.
no,
This month was not a good one for productivity. My efforts went into my new YouTube channel, which I'm launching, which is about painting toy soldiers. So sorry, L&D world. Priorities.
teach people how to paint L&D mini soldiers.
Hey, I painted the first model that I have painted in like a decade. I am so happy with it. It's the
You know what's
first time
really
in a
fun?
long time of an evening I just went, I think I'm going to paint something. And then, like, 8.5 hours later, I was like, whoa, it's nearly morning.
I have to say, you said this is the first time I painted something, and then you turned around, and it was the first time I noticed the chicken, and I thought you painted the chicken. I thought
I,
that's what you were going to tell us, is that I
that'd have
painted the
been great,
chicken.
wouldn't it? But no, the massive green chicken has been there since, like, November last year.
I have so not paid attention.
It's always fun when people notice it for the first time. They're like, "Is there a green chicken there?" It's like, "Yes," and we've been on lots of calls since it's been there. That's
Oh,
awesome.
man.
Anyway, let's
Anyway,
dive into our first topic. Shall we do data and ethics first?
I like that one.
That's right, everyone. It's an ethics conversation. Aren't
We
you
might as
lucky
well.
on a Friday afternoon?
We can end on a low note. Wow, this is good.
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
That's positive.
Wow. All right. Um. Gosh, where do we want to start with this one? Because I know this was a request from Karen.
Yeah,
Karen.
so I guess maybe that's a good place to start. Is that this was requested last time, and I'm not going to lie, my initial thing was this is something I know nothing about, as in nothing. Not ethics in general. Like I consider myself to be a relatively ethical person, but in terms of ethics, data, and its role in L&D, it's not an area of expertise for me. So if anyone has any opinions or does have any actual expertise, please do let us know. Because I know, Joey, you have worked in that kind of data world. So I think really it would be good to maybe get a bit of insight from you first before I ramble about what the internet's told me.
Sure. I think the best way to kick this off is with I'm going to kick this off with an article because I don't necessarily want to start with with a conversation about how big data works. I want to wrap this into something, and I'm going to put a link in the chat for everybody. This is specifically what I'm talking about. An article came out. Intel has an AI that detects student emotions. So as you are, as if you are on a Zoom call or something, there's an AI that will say your kid is sleepy, tired, frustrated, confused. The actual headline says Intel calls its AI that detects student emotions a teaching tool. Others call it morally reprehensible.
Have you got the link, dude? Because it's not coming up in the chat.
I put it in the I put it in the YouTube chat. I might need to put it in
there
the chat.
either.
I just put it in. It's just in there.
That's all right. Maybe it's just not. Maybe it's just not showing for me. No link for Tom. That's all right.
Thanks, Melon App. I don't know if there's a better way to. Oh, I can't. Yeah, I can't actually send that.
If you look at the top, yep, do that. That's cool. I can copy and paste it from there.
All right, one sec, everyone. I'm not quite sure why that didn't work. It's also very possible that as not the host, links don't work in chat.
That would make a lot of sense, wouldn't
it? standard fare there.
Let's. I have added it to the chat, and it has gone to YouTube, and it has gone to Twitch because someone is watching us on Twitch. Hello, what the one Twitch viewer? That's awesome. It was worth 13 months of effort to get this to work on Twitch, just so that you could join us today. Feel special.
Yep. So anyway, the way this story goes is Intel sells basically an add-on to Zoom called Class. And what Class does, or one of the features of Class, is it detects. And if I remember right, it kind of works like a score of sorts, but you also get like the image they have is adorable, where it shows like little emojis of what your kid is doing. And I can't tell if it's racist or not. But we're just letting that one go. But so you can see if students are asleep or bored or whatnot. And this got into a conversation of just the general ethics of using data like this. Is this something that is healthy, or is this something that becomes a social justice issue where you've got technology that is now really kind of taking guesses for things that really they shouldn't be taking guesses with? So that's where this will start, and it's going to lead into just the general use of data. And I'll jump into that in a sec. My first thing with this, let's just quickly react to this. This makes no freaking sense as a tool, honestly. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I would want to do with this. One, let's look at this. Let's look at the screenshot for a sec. And I'm going to hope that that's not the actual screenshot because it's actually covering the kids' faces. Two, this is great if maybe there's only 9 or only 4. If I'm running a class of 30, I don't even know what to do with 30. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to see these things. So I guess that's going to lead into the next step of like, what's the next step of evolution? If sleep is what the tool thinks, it's going to like beep that person or something. Like, I don't know what this expands to. That's tangible, that isn't just straight up creepy.
Yeah, I must admit, when I first saw it, and let us know in the chat what you think of something like this, and if you can think of a way in which it would be useful. I really couldn't, because if you're running a session, if you've got time to look at the emoji report in whatever form it takes, you've got time to look at them. If you've got, and generally speaking, that's you don't have time for either. Let's be honest. When you're running a session, it doesn't. I can't see how it would help. The only thing I was thinking of is effectively using it post the session to go. So, how was that received? Would I, however, as a professional, want to be evaluated based on what the AI thinks of that? No. And is that actually useful information to be evaluated on? I don't
No.
know. Like,
Yeah,
just
it's tough.
because an AI says that person was bored, does that mean they didn't learn? You,
Yeah, and that becomes an accuracy question. The AI
mm.
says that person looks bored.
How
You might as well
often
be
have you gone,
dial
oh,
lines.
are you even listening to me? And someone's just like, yeah, of course I am. Sorry, I just look like this.
Yeah.
You know?
Um. So this is the only step I can go is I'm going to make an admission. I'm currently having conversations regarding around ADHD.
Hmm.
Um, and one of the things that has been talked about are people with ADHD not being able to focus on one thing at a time, always looking elsewhere, but they're still very focused. It's not that I'm not paying attention to you, it's that is that I kind of need something else while you're in the background, but I'm still absorbing all of this information.
Yeah.
So now I start getting into the question of what about those with learning disabilities? What about those where, we'll just go with typical neurodivergence, where the expression they have is not quite how their brain is functioning. How is that handled? And does that throw everything away?
Yeah.
Um, there's just a lot of weird steps. Phil jumps in. I think it could work for large audiences where you can't see everyone's camera and it alerts you that someone I assume, might be disengaged. Whereas a
Oh,
class, you'd
yeah.
be able to spot that possible indicator.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's. I
It's
think
an
if it was
argument
used
for.
like that, I guess I could see someone just kind of getting that there might be someone disengaged. So long as if you weren't acting on it as fact. Because I think that's the thing, isn't it? Is that you'd never be able to say this is exactly what the case is. It would always have to be there may be, or three people three people are no longer. They've walked off. They've walked out of frame. You know, it's that kind of thing you can say as a fact, but the rest of it would all be there may be, there might be, this could be, it
Mhm.
appears that. So
Also,
I guess as a potential guide to how you're facilitating a session, that might work.
I've seen class in where a
Oh,
little could flag someone confused, then you can private chat that person to check in on them without putting it on the spot. I feel there's better ways to do that. Like, I mean, I'm oddly a big fan of Cisco WebEx when it comes to conferencing because of how many tools you have at your disposal. And one of the things, they do the message just the moderators or message just somebody. And you can they also do things like annotations, and there are a lot of icons and things that person can use to show something. I think it's just a matter of setting expectations. But also, I don't know, if I'm in the middle of a class teaching, I guess I'm just hitting that. I guess it's just like a one button, like, hey, you okay? Do I need to re-explain it? Yes, please. I don't know. Wondering
yeah.
how it interprets RBF. I don't know.
And yeah, this is to me where it gets interesting. Is this kind of AI can only get good, and it's only got as good as it is now, same as all AI, by feeding it vast amounts of data. And I think the question we do have to ask is where is that data coming from? Because for instance, what faces mean is very context based, right?
Yeah.
There is a big difference between when I smile at people on a business call, on a Teams call, let's say, and when I actually smile. In that, when I actually smile, I might be happy or find something funny. On Teams, I just get moaned at if I don't. There's it's how do we allow for the fact that this is not a social interaction, that it's not a real interaction, it's a workplace interaction, it's a learning interaction. The
Yeah.
relationship is not peer to peer, it's teacher, instructor, trainer to attendee of some description or student.
I can only wonder if
um,
there's a way to like turn them off too, which I haven't really looked at like
mm,
how class functions, but hey everybody, I need you to look at something over there. Now everyone's looking away. They're all wrong. Everything's bad. Everyone's confused. I'm
yeah.
curious how that's going to work. The other thing to consider is not just where the information's coming from, but where it's going. And that's where the second part of the conversation gets really fun, and something that advocacy groups are talking a lot about of this is an excessive amount of surveillance, and now you're starting to get into privacy invasion issues and facial recognition problems. Like,
Mhm.
what if this is a security problem? What aspects of your face are you measuring? And can that be tied to facial recognition software for other companies? Like, God forbid, in the terms of service, something says that they could sell data. And they can sell facial recognition on individuals and whatnot. And I'm gonna throw up the that's actually BS flag, but it's gonna be a conversation that people have. It's gonna be something
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, now they're tracking my face, and now they're tracking my cheeks, now they're tracking if I got fat, and I'm gonna start seeing healthy choice commercials, and like you can take this down you can chase the waterfall quite a bit.
Well, but then the trouble is, without reading the terms of service, that question is effectively: do you trust big tech companies to act in your best interest? If your answer was yes, you're a moron. It's like they are inherently not going to do anything that they don't legally have to do to protect you. They will do the bare minimum to ensure they can make as much money as possible without actually breaking the law.
I'm gonna go with
It's,
yes on that one. I can't quite go as best. I can't go as far as best interest, but that's where the big data stuff comes in. But um, yeah, they are gonna try to get away with as much as humanly possible. That will be
yeah,
a thing.
of course. That's all businesses, by the way, not just tech businesses. Just to clarify, no business is your friend. Businesses are businesses. They exist to make money and nothing else. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I get, and that for me is one of those big things, is that I love the idea of this data driven world with truly intelligent AI that can actually help improve our lives, not like Alexa, Siri, and Google freaking Home that can tell us a joke or buy shit off the internet. Like, actually do useful stuff, you know? But unfortunately, we kind of opted for this free internet world where data is the currency. We are the product because we wanted everything for free.
Yeah.
And
Hi
I
Heidi,
think
by the way.
sorry.
Hi Heidi, by the way. Good to see you.
Oh, hello.
We've
Um,
had a lot of conversations lately.
yeah. So yeah, I think it's with the companies that are involved in the space more than anything. That's what makes me nervous, because there's not one of them that has a good reputation for looking after people's data. Whether it's Intel or Google or Apple or Amazon, these are not the names of companies that you would trust. Well, we do all trust them with our personal data because you have no actual choice. But the
Yeah.
idea of optionally giving more data, it makes a lot of people very uneasy. I mean, the
All right.
reality is it's all out there anyway. So
Yep. All right. Let's get into the fun. Let's get into the flip side of this
go for it.
conversation regarding big data in general. Because naturally this becomes an ethics issue of, well, what are you doing with my data? What do you do? And when anybody says that, the biggest question, the biggest problem is an actual understanding of how big data works. So before we can even get into the ethics of it, it helps to understand what big data cares about, because the stigma right now is that you can track my face and you know what I'm doing and you've seen what I do on my phone, and at some point in time some entity is going to come to me and say, Joey Senart, we found you and we found all these things about you, and now you're arrested, or we're taking your kid, or say, some terrible thing is going to happen that is going to target me as a human, as Joey Senart. And that's not how big data works. That is never how big data actually works legally. And there has been a case where that case I just told you was very illegal, and that was Cambridge Analytica. Which, no, this isn't a politics conversation, but it was a Trump campaign thing. Where Cambridge Analytica literally did take the information that you're sharing, and they pinpointed it to individuals, and then went to those addresses and those individuals and said, hey, Stacy, here's stuff targeted at you directly. That is not how big data works. Big data does not care about you, an individual. They care about you, the details. And that's really important. And I think that's something that makes, I don't like it in this context, this emoticon context, but I think there's a lot of good context that L&D can use big data type stuff for. That type of stuff is, what devices are you on? What locations are you, or what general location are you at? Those are another common ones. How long do you spend on, anybody who's created a video or something like that is probably familiar with terms like bounce rate. That's a metric. I show up to a website, I leave 3 seconds later. You didn't show up to the website. You bounced. That general information is the stuff that big data likes to capture. Now, of course, depending on what you're looking at, in L&D, that'd be a fun conversation to have on that type of generic information that'd be useful. In corporate America, in marketing and business, I care that a new homeowner just moved to a neighborhood more than I care that Joey Senart moved to my address. Because the way that the marketing aspect works is that restaurants don't buy Joey Senart. They buy, we want to send out something to welcome new people to our community. Find me new people who moved into neighborhoods in this city. They don't care my name. They don't. It's the same reason that I can go to, I can shop for, we'll just say a local clothing store. And I don't get local shops in Oklahoma. I'm in Colorado, by the way. They're tracking my location. I didn't give them my location when I searched on my phone, but they know that this device was in Colorado when they searched it. Maybe Bob's Tire Emporium and Learning and Development Center in Oklahoma doesn't care about him, so they won't give me that ad. Those are the positive benefits of big data. Those are the things that matter, and that's how it's used. Facial recognition stuff, I don't know. Jimmy's always frustrated. Maybe we send him to cerebral. I hope that's not a thing that ever happens. I really hope that's not a thing we ever see. But that's a door that's opened. So that's the generic that's basically how big data works. I care about such high level specifics because anybody who's leveraging that information, that's what they're actually buying. If I buy a list, I'm buying a list of general demographics. I have no value in finding somebody named Joey unless a kangaroo zoo is opening up. And I thought it'd be cute. So that's the misconception. I want to make sure that everybody, as we talk about using data ethically, you get off of this idea that data is trying to target you, your name, your address, your specific personal situation. They don't care. There's too much data. There are too many records out in the world that it would take days for somebody to even find you amidst the kind of data that they have.
And I think the slightly interesting thing is, I think increasingly in the kind of L&D world, that's the kind of approach we need to have towards data, because a big part of certainly mine, I think a lot of people's issues with our practice is we have no overarching kind of data collection and evidence to support the things we say. And it's because so often we do focus in on this needle data. We focus on this person in this department has responded in this way. No one gives a crap about whether Amy or Alan or Shanice responded well to this e-learning. I care about whether or not 10 to 15,000 people in a certain position in their career responded to a certain modality of training in a certain way. I kind of think if we could think about data that way, it would be so useful, and it would allow us to get away from the very small data sets we always end up with, just because of technically water is different to electric, is different to gas, is different to working in a call center. It's like, yes, but how do, I don't know, 25 to 45-year-olds in their first 6 months at work respond to training? Yeah. That's the kind of answer that I think these things could allow us to pull that data together for. And
Yeah.
I think when we're talking about sort of AI models and data, that's where it could be useful, and where you're exactly as you say, who it is doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Which I
It's
think
also
could be an
great from
interesting
just
change.
a pure technical perspective. Hey, send us
Mm.
information about your machine. Oh, I don't want to do that. Well, it's nice to know what phones and what browsers things break on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's I mean
Um,
that's a big one in the
mhm.
e-learning world, right? Then the moment someone goes, "I'm using Internet Explorer 3," you're like, "Ah, I see." Um,
And I guess I'll end it on a serious. I guess we'll continue on a serious downer note. All the stuff you don't think that people have on you, they do. I'm sorry, we do. You use your phone. You buy anything. Not only do we track what you bought, we track what you searched for. We track what you searched for prior. Those companies know what you have notoriously searched for prior to that. They know if you are a brands person. They know that if you only buy jeans twice a year, we'll know based on your, they'll know based on your purchasing history if you only buy at certain sales. They'll know if you gravitate more towards dollars off or percentages off. The holy trinity of marketing analytics is RFM. That stands for recency, frequency, and monetary. When was the last time you bought? How often do you buy? How much do you spend? Anything and everything around those, we know. Like, well, I say we as if I'm a part of this. I used to be a part of this. I worked for Epsilon, by the way. They were big data. So they captured a lot of this type of stuff. And then it was used. It was never used maliciously. It's just used to segment. Um, if any of you were into sporting goods, this is a great example. What's up, Luke? If any of you into sporting goods, I'm trying. I need to figure out how far I can go with this. I had a client who captured information in buying trends, not just with them, but with other marketplaces, other sporting good marketplaces, to determine whether or not you were a tennis person, or if you were a cyclist, or if you were into fitness, or if you need yoga. They were also able to tell, did you just have kids? Are you starting to buy kid shoes all of a sudden? And they tailored advertising campaigns for that. So that way you didn't get, hunting gear, because we knew better that you didn't care about hunting gear. But the mom who's looking for shoes for their kid, you're going to notice that ad. And it's more a good thing than a bad thing to not. It's called batch and blasting, where you just blast everything to everybody and hope something sticks. Getting data even stuff that sounds creepy, to hear like they're tracking that, you look at it and say, actually, I'm glad that I'm seeing these. Like those ads that you see that seem so timely, there's a way that happens.
creepy story about that, and then I know we've got other topics. I know we'll move on.
Oh, trust me. Yeah, we can. There's a couple
We
things that I think we could. There's a couple keywords we can probably even say in the microphone that are going to kick off ads. That's a level of creepy that I don't like. That's going a little too
this
far.
is this is what I'm about to
Okay.
say. So a few weeks ago, we had our gas safety inspection. So every year, gas safety inspector comes around, checks the boiler, checks the hob on the oven. This time round, he went, your boiler is still way too old, but it's okay. But if it breaks, no one can fix it. Yada yada. Same as always, not a problem. The gas hob on the stove, there's a problem with one of the valves. You need to replace that. Okay, all good. At this point, no one has gone on the internet. Not one person. Now, we rent our house, so we're not going to pay to replace it, so I don't even do a search for a new hob. We contact our landlord and say, gas inspector says we need a new hob. Not a problem, we'll have it installed in a couple of weeks. Cool. The next day, Amazon pops up on my phone. We think you might need a new hob. Creepiest moment ever. It's like, again, I haven't searched for it. It was so creepy. I went downstairs and I asked my wife, have you searched for this on any account that we share? Have you searched for it on the internet? No, because we're not going to buy it. Cool. Just wanted to check.
Um,
Creepy.
all right. I've
It's
got a half creepy but really funny story.
Go for it.
Because it spoils something. Like, all right, there are a lot of instances where I really like when big data promotes things. Like, I love learning about new restaurants. I love seeing a whole bunch of new things. Where that screws things up, though, is when I'm having conversations with friends and kind of doing a little digging about a specific purchase that I'm about to make, and I'm shopping, and then I'm laying in bed with my girlfriend, and we're watching something, and all the wedding ads show up on Hulu. And she's like, I feel like they're trying to tell us something. And I'm like, no, they're not. I might have been shopping for engagement rings. Ignore these. Like,
Oh, dear. This
so
is
I
it.
really couldn't keep that. I was like, that was like the one time I was like, damn it, really?
So here's a question that I was chatting with someone about the other day. Do you care? All these companies collecting your data, and they're using it to advertise. They're using it to advertise and form personas and basically advertise some more. Does it actually bother you at this point? To the point where you're willing to do something about it?
No, because I've seen it. I've never seen it done maliciously to me. Creepy, weird, but easy to ignore. It's never bogged anything. Thankfully, pop-up blockers have gotten real good. Can you imagine what that kind of tech would have been like with pop-up blockers not being a
Hey,
thing?
ad blockers are piracy. I still stand by my argument there. Um, I'll kick that one off again. But yeah, and everyone in the chat, I mean, let us know how you feel about it. But certainly, whenever there's a new outrage about, oh, they've got all my data, I kind of just think, oh, shut up. We know
Yeah.
it's just life now. We did choose this. Like every time we signed up to the new social media that came out, that's what we agreed to. Every time we used Google as a free search engine, Google is a hugely expensive thing to operate. It indexes the internet. That's a huge expense to Google. So you are the product when you're using something free. I think that's kind of what you sign up for.
Yeah.
That seems to be how everyone feels as well. But let's have a look. We've got some comments coming in. So Joseph sometimes tells Alexa that he's onto her and she plays dumb. Yeah, funny that, isn't it? So Linnea,
I like this one. I don't want targeted ads because I don't want to buy unnecessary stuff. Yep. It's not unnecessary until it's not necessary until it is. And my job as a marketer is to make it necessary. So you're literally part of that.
Oh, we've all experienced this. So Heidi said, my husband said he was literally outside in the yard looking at the trash cans, thinking that he'd like to better hide them, and he got an app the next day. That is...
Oh, man.
It's creepy, but I think it does happen, doesn't it? That's the thing. So Luke's not bothered. Doesn't impact you in a negative way. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Heidi, no. I've learned about so many things I don't know I needed. I'd agree with that.
Yeah. Really reads the terms of service when creating an account somewhat online. Yeah, pretty much nobody. Like even the ones that say like we have the right to sell your data to third parties. I don't care.
You think they've not got it already?
So here's the thing here's one of the things to really understand also that big data that you don't really learn from big data because you're just too busy hating it. There is certain information, depending on the type of advertising, that's actually illegal to own. It's called PII, personally identifiable information. So when you fun fact, those ads about like your trash can and whatnot, they actually don't know who you are because that information is more often than not stripped. What they get from you is your device IDs. And your device IDs don't have to be tied to an individual. They're simply they can simply be tied to a profile, a user ID profile. This device ID has notoriously been shopping for blank, 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 blank. And it does it at this time, and it's in this location. You just happen to be the one attached to that device ID. That's how it works. A lot of companies will actually strip names, physical addresses. Naturally, things like credit card information are absolutely wiped. That is pure private. That's those never even make it over. So yeah, understand that a lot of the stuff that most people are afraid of, it's actually illegal for a lot of advertising agencies to even have They don't have them.
This is it. So there we are. I mean, the chat's fairly decided. We don't care if you have our data. Did you hear that, Google? Take it all. Um,
Right?
but no, I think in fairness, it's as you say, it's we can't stop it now. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Right. So now I guess that leads to the fun question, and I'd love some help in the chat on this one. I should not have poured the rest of that way. Is if we actually don't care, what do we do with it? As L&D, what would be fun to do with it that isn't marketing focused? Because naturally, I can think of a billion reasons I would want to use that data to market, but I'm trying to think of like what kinds of demographics and what kind of things would be fun to take for L&D. I've already covered device and the amount of time that you spent on things. I wonder if there's like, I didn't actually think this far of like what would be good, what kind of creepy metrics would be fun to take that help us understand whether or not training is good or not. Perhaps things like, did you Google search something we talked about, and how long did it take you to do that?
Yeah.
I've
always thought it would be really interesting if you've got like training and a knowledge base in your business. I want to, because so often training says go to here to find out more. I want to know how many people do and how many times they then come back to that in future. So if we say use this article on this knowledge base whenever you're, I don't know, doing data protection at the start of a call, let's say, with all the recording quotes and things like that, how many people go and use that every time they have a call? That's the data that I wish we could have and link together to say this person did the course and then they did this going onwards.
Yeah, they went and did the thing. I know that when it comes to tangible things that I look at that are also kind of creepy, that you could consider to be creepy, I like tracking, if I'm doing onboarding training, what the average rate of, did they leave, basically? The average tenure of somebody from when we started training. Do we have people who take training and then 3 months later they're gone? Other tangible metrics that we do use are support ticket touch rates. That's another one. You took a training on X category. We had a support ticket on X category. It took you this many touches between the support team and not in order to get to find a resolution. If that number is way too high, we look back at the training and see if it was covered. If it's too high and it wasn't covered, we know to cover it. Then you come back and say, well, now we've covered it. Does that touch rate go down? But I'm not tracking anything other in the training other than, does it exist? And I can also perhaps say, is this training pointed to at some point in a support ticket? Yeah. It's stuff like that. It's things that branch out of some, I'm just going to call it for what it is, bullshit survey at the end of the training that doesn't mean anything because nobody's had the time to apply it. The only thing you're going to get out of it is, did somebody enjoy their experience?
Or my personal favourite, how do we know they're implementing this in the workplace? They told us in the survey. They said they were 8 out of 10 likely to change something in what they do in work. Oh, well, mission accomplished.
Favorite question, my favorite survey question, which is code for, this is the dumbest, please don't ever do this. Would you recommend this training to a colleague?
Oh.
I hate that question.
So ask, how will you find out what your NPS score is for your e-learning? The most important metric of all.
Oh my God. There are uses for NPS. This isn't one of them.
L&D doesn't have any. Just stop. We just don't need it. It's not a useful metric for us.
I don't know anybody who net promotes training.
That's it.
Except for trainers.
Exactly. The only people you want to be asking is your L&D team, and if they give it anything less than a 10, they're being honest.
It's like the same 5 D-list celebrities moving around different versions of Survivor. That's pretty much what an NPS score in training is. It's the same 6 people bouncing to each other's trainings, giving each other 10 scores.
Let's take a look at
Yeah, we've
some
got so
of
much in the
these
chat.
comments. So Phil, coming in with some platform insight. That's exciting. So platform usage flows that tracks their journey and where they've clicked, timing of
Yes.
decisions per page, and the bounce rate of courses. I think with that, I mean, that would be super interesting. He looks like he's extended it. Super creepy would be getting feedback and then going back to your PC and a course recommendation on that skill. Let's get creepy. Don't
Ooh,
say
I
that,
like
Phil.
it.
Don't say that. But actually, no. I think that's the kind of genuine insight that would actually help L&D teams. You would finally be able to say this did cause this, and we know that because we can see all these steps from one to the other. We'd finally have some causation rather than just correlation.
We noticed you went to 13 articles to try to make a Captivate button look good. Would you like to try Articulate Storyline? Sorry, I had to. I had to.
The trouble is, then you'll get the. We notice you're trying to use text in your course. Would you like to not use Articulate Storyline?
Yeah, right. Oh my god.
What else
Elizabeth
have we
is
got?
here for you.
Heidi, I
Oh,
think some LMS LXPs are using the Netflix algorithm. If you like
you like
X,
X,
you
I
may
like
like
Y.
Y. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think
I like those.
yeah, and I think Phil might be able to share some stuff with us in
Yeah.
future about that.
I'd love to see more of that in training programs even. The
Yeah.
problem with so many training programs is they get stuck at the 101 levels that there's just no 201 or 301 to send you to.
Well,
But I love
on
that.
that note, one of the
Yeah,
big
we'll get there.
announcements at Learning Tech actually next week is going to be from Thrive. They were an LXP provider,
Mhm.
were being the key term. They're moving to a skills platform. And one of the things they're really shouting about is the if you like X, you may like Y approach to their new their new platform, which is going to be very interesting to see how well it works. Because assumably on day one, it's got no data in it. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how that scales and adjusts over time.
So the way that's done is you do that with tags. Because that's a
Yes.
common
Yeah.
thing with new businesses is you don't have enough data until you suddenly have way too much data. So you just tag and you just use metadata like crazy or meta tags like crazy,
But that's
and
what I
then you
mean.
go from there.
That's fine initially, but it's not usually sustainable because that's a lot
No,
of additional work up front. Whereas I suppose what you want is as quickly as possible to first of all confirm your tagging is correct, because that's the other issue with tagging, right? You assume
yeah.
that the guy doing it knows what the hell he's on about. And
Okay,
then
that's fine.
over time, you want to build up that bank of data to be able to do more than just the tags or connect tags that you maybe didn't think were connected, but
Yep.
turns out they are.
Yeah, it's a good. Just you got to get started though. I got 50 new people
Oh,
on
yeah.
a platform. Let's see what they do.
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
you do the generics, the top fives. Those are also really good ones. So like, what are the top 5 that people are watching, and then you do. It's literally just going to keep coming up. You do your waterfalls,
There
and
you
you
go.
see where they drip from there.
So we've got a couple more
I'm
comments.
so glad I got this beer.
Linnea
Much
would
love.
love to know what employees search for online to see if we either need training or if we have training that people still search for. That's interesting.
I'd love to
I
know
think,
employees search for online to see if you yeah.
yeah, that would be. Because I've often wondered how often in a workplace environment an L&D team has put all this time and effort into something, but their employees Google it anyway because
Yeah.
Google's done it better, basically. Um,
Yeah, because I know you can
Heidi,
do that.
yes,
You can do that in knowledge bases because
yes, yeah.
knowledge bases use that pretty religiously, as well as like the social knowledge bases. Like I think Lithium is one that that has a mixture between a knowledge base and a forum that you can see what people are posting and then see if you have posts for it and see what they're reacting, and see if they're actually following up.
I think
Um,
Fuse Universal do that as well. It's quite a cool idea. I quite
yeah,
like
I
it.
love it. You get real insights. I remember working for Constant Contact that used Lithium at the time. That was a decade and change ago. And we knew exactly the training that we needed to make because we knew what everybody kept searching for over and over. And we also knew what of those FAQ documents were being linked in support ticket requests.
Yeah.
So we can actually get a count of here's how many times we needed this support ticket request. And that did one of two things. One, it had us change our training, or two, the better one, it had the product know they needed to change the product. Which is great. It was, man, creepy search history data is wonderful for businesses.
So on that note,
history to performance metrics. Ooh.
I think Heidi is spot on. IDTX 2023. Let's get creepy. I feel like that conference may attract the wrong crowd, if I'm honest. But hey, let's see how it goes. I'm not keen on doing T-shirts for that one, though. I'll be honest. Maybe we'll do something else.
I'm so speaking of that one.
Duffel bags, large hooded things. Maybe I don't know. Here we go. I can certainly relate to this from Joe Suarez. My work search history would mostly betray how often I have to look up how to do things in Illustrator. That is 90% of my favorites bar.
Right. It's like, you want a gradient match? Die. Go away.
Cool. So, I mean, I guess I've not really got anything else to kind of talk about in the data world. I think it's like I think, as you said, I think it's very much misunderstood. I certainly don't have any, as I said at the start, any expertise in it, but it does just feel like it's something that people get upset about because they feel like they should get upset about it, but they only do that because they don't understand it. That makes sense.
There's so much fear around what it can do, and there's so much stigma around what it's actually doing. And the thing that also have to appreciate, and it actually literally goes back to what we were just talking about with the AI stuff, is people need to respond to it in such a way that doesn't look like they're being targeted.
Yes.
And that's going to be the trick. If I notice that, you're struggling in Illustrator, and, that was part of the job requirements, coming back and saying, we feel based on your search history that you were lying to us, that's kind of a crappy way to go. So there's going to be there needs to be a lot of education on, well, how do you use that in a way that is maybe subtle, but actually isn't trying to call somebody out more than just, hey, maybe we can make this struggle easier. I think that is the only proper use case for it, honestly, is how do we make what's going wrong easier? Not how do we call out what's wrong? How do we, because then you're actually going to become the problem that you aren't right now, which is you are going to go to Timmy, who is struggling in Illustrator, and say, Timmy, you're struggling in Illustrator, you got to go. No. Yeah. So there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of conversation. And, if the internet ever played nicely, maybe we might get somewhere. Absolutely. The mini houses and the off the grid fad died, so that's great. So we're moving in the right direction.
Is it because we realised that the good old days were terrible and that we don't want to go back 50 years in time?
No, we don't at all. You wanted heat and electricity? Let's talk about how to do that. You wanted to use the bathroom? Let's talk about one-ply. I don't know how many years it was between one-ply toilet paper and two-ply toilet paper, but that had to be a miserable number of years.
I don't think it made a difference. I just think people consumed a lot more toilet paper a lot quicker.
Probably, yeah.
Let's be honest. So to round that off then, I think this pretty much sums it up. Yeah, but no one would have a job if they couldn't Google important parts of that job.
Yeah, great.
Absolutely. That is exactly it. So,
and it's not a bad thing.
No, absolutely not. I've never understood the you should remember all the important stuff in your job. That's dangerous.
That's 90s talk.
Exactly. Yeah.
Before everything could exist on the phones, like you need to know, like that. It's the whole calculus. Like you need to know exactly how to do this equation, and you need to be able to do it by hand.
Yeah, just like when it comes, exactly. But when it comes to anything important, I don't want someone doing it from memory.
No,
like, I trust the person that has the instruction book in front of them and is going to follow it step by step without ever missing a beat. That's what I want from an expert in anything.
You don't get any extra points for doing it wrong, but from memory.
Exactly.
Like, neat. This is why my wife only trusts me to cook one time a week. And that's the only time I want to do it. I'm working. I'm trying to make it habitual.
Excellent. So, obviously, we've got a big topic, which is burnout, workplace trauma, that kind of thing. So, before we get into that, because I feel like that's the one that's going to take up a solid chunk of the second half of the show, shall we say?
Yeah, that one's gonna be pretty interesting.
Yeah, let's talk tech and any updates elsewhere in the industry before we dive into that.
I'm gonna throw one in because we've talked about it so many times, but we never really talk about it, which is DaVinci Resolve.
Yep.
Had a massive launch, including of what is it, DaVinci Resolve Cloud?
Yep. So we officially went from 17 to 18. So every year there's a major version launch, rather than, in fairness, they still launch like an update most months anyway. But this was 17 to 18, and it was huge. Cloud was one big thing. So you know how difficult it is, for instance, to share a Premiere Pro file, or as I found out this week, a Camtasia file even, between users.
Yeah.
It's a real pain, especially if said Camtasia file goes from Mac to Windows. Did you know they're not compatible with each other? What a wonderfully fantastic bit of software design. I love Camtasia. But I really like the software. But seriously, same bit of software, runs on Windows, runs on Mac, but you can't just lift it and load it on the other. I mean, whatever. To resolve this, DaVinci Resolve has created a whole cloud ecosystem where you can just load your video editing program software project into the cloud, so that if your colorist, for instance, is not the same as your video editor, not a problem. They can just sign in remotely. Phenomenal. Yep. They also, I mean, some of the other stuff they've done is amazing. Fusion, which is kind of like their After Effects area, has got a wave of updates. Farlight, which is their audio editor, again, huge number of updates. They released loads of updates in the editing and effects panels, especially around like rotoscoping, removing things, sort of really clever AI effects.
I'm so most importantly, rotoscoping.
Yeah, this is it.
It's triggered by rotoscoping.
Oh, not. But here's the thing, guys. Still free. You can still just go and download DaVinci Resolve for free. The studio version has some cool extras in it, but even that is a one-off cost. Bear in mind that I bought DaVinci Resolve 17 when it was brand new. I'll be upgrading to DaVinci Resolve Studio 18 for free because I own the software. And they're not going to bill me for a new copy just because they've increased the version number.
I love those. I love that they do that. I really love that they do that. So yeah, DaVinci rocking it. I'm actually gonna be switching over to DaVinci for most of my editing because I want a little bit more control. Partly because I'm switching off of Camtasia for my video recorder. Because I'm really sick and tired. So one of my biggest frustrations with Camtasia, and again, I've said this many times, and if you're new, I'm going to say it again. Camtasia is not a video editor. It's a video composer. It assembles. So doing simple things like Suarez just mentioned in basic reverses are not things that you can do. And it's silly and frustrating, but the target audience are not people who you would think reverse video. But trust me, when I do transitions, it sucks. Because intros and outros, I've got to actually recreate from scratch. But no, there's no viewfinder, which frustrates me when the viewfinder is this big. And I wish of all things that Camtasia would change that. Like the basics of things that really make it use, there's just so many quality of life things that Camtasia can do. It really frustrates me. So I am actually going to be switching to DaVinci Resolve to start doing major things. I'm still going to use Camtasia for like annotations and zoom in and zoom outs, but for the basics, I'm going to be using Resolve. On that note, let's talk about Camtasia, who just did a bunch of bug fixes because that's all they do instead of adding a viewfinder. But when we're talking tech, we don't get to do this too often. Actually, sorry. Let me rephrase. Nothing new with Captivate. That's not the news too often. They're getting ready for Project
Oh,
Charm.
I missed my chance.
What? I forgot you have sound effects.
I forgot to use them this whole episode. Terrible.
So this being, so that being said about Captivate and the running gag that they never do anything, Project Charm, that's what to look for, is getting a lot more attention. So I'm hoping that means they're moving towards something useful, tangible, visible.
I'm going to make up for it now.
There you go. Project Charm, everybody. That is Adobe Captivate that I still think is going to get rebranded. I said it a year ago that I think Adobe Captivate is going to get rebranded as to not confuse itself with Adobe Captivate Prime.
It does seem daft to have the two products that are really not similar in any way have the same name.
Yeah, so I'm still very convinced. I'm going to go find that clip and I'm going to bring it. It's like, I told you. Also, to be noted, Project Charm is getting a whole lot of buzz. I just remind everybody that we reported that first. Just saying.
We were there. Breaking news with no real information, but we were there.
All right. Crappy credibility aside, let's talk about Storyline. Because Storyline actually got an update that's worth updating for. Which is
sorry.
I love this. On KIDT Radio. Longtime evangelist person is leaving Adobe. Captivate News. Longtime evangelist is leaving Adobe. Doesn't bode well. I think that furthers my proof that it's no longer going to be Captivate.
Yeah. I think I think at this point, which is kind of my argument for storylines, which maybe cover in a minute, it's time to delete everything and start again.
Yeah.
It does need to be a fresh start, because at this point, if they release a new version of Captivate, hands up, who's excited? Look, genuinely.
Come on, you have a sound effect.
Oh.
There we go.
I feel like that's appropriate. Yeah.
Project Charm is going to be the Google Plus of authoring tools. Do you know authoring? Do you know learning? Do you work at Adobe? You should try Project Charm.
Hey, some of us had Google Plus. Google Plus was my social media. I was all into Google Plus.
You know what? I'm gonna go on a limb, and I'm gonna be a problem child here. If a longtime evangelist of Adobe Captivate is leaving, and for a long time Adobe Captivate was a laughing stock of people who know what they're doing, maybe that's a good thing.
Possibly.
I'll take the dark approach of like, maybe you kept trying to say that this was so good, people just need to understand it differently. Maybe you're the problem.
Maybe.
Sorry, hit my LinkedIn. Come after me. That doesn't have to be an IDT thing. Come after me on that one.
I'll be honest, say I don't know enough about that. The Adobe community gets on my nerves, because the Adobe community is a little bit holier than thou about their software, in my opinion, for what is very overpriced but available open source everywhere else software. You pay for the convenience of having it in a single package. I get that, but not everything is what's best in class, shall we say, as they might claim. Imagine your job is to convince people Captivate is great. I mean, in fairness, if you could do that, there is nothing you could not do. That person could be president if they live in the States. They could, if you can convince people of that, you can convince people of anything.
There's a whole thread on Facebook in the instructional designer group where somebody asked, what are the pros and cons of Captivate? And I got into this whole thing with somebody between Captivate and Storyline, where he was just like, Captivate is just straight up better. I'm like, oh no. But at the end of the day, I had to acknowledge that I'm trying to compare like Walmart and Big Lots, which for us is like Walmart and the Walmart where things are misspelled on the label. Like that's kind of where we're at right now. It was a pretty wild conversation. But that being said, let's jump forward. Let's jump
Oh,
forward to storyline. That
Andre,
did
do tell us if you know stuff. We won't tell anyone. Don't worry. This doesn't go out on the internet. It's entirely private.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
not long ago I did say, what if a proper tech company came out with an authoring tool? Now I use the example of Microsoft. What if Google came out with an authoring tool?
Here we go. Okay. Storyline.
Yeah.
Storyline fixed well, all right, fixed is the wrong word. Sorry. Made monster enhancements to their timeline management. And they don't suck. I'm gonna show you how low the bar is, though. And Tom, I know you know this. I know it's frustrating for you. It's frustrating for anybody who uses Storyline. Have you ever tried to copy multiple things in the timeline and move them all up together? They fixed that.
Oh,
They fixed that.
hey.
You can come on. You've got it. That's how low the bar is, guys. But you can do that. They've so you can rearrange the order of multiple objects now. You can choose the order of pasted objects on the timeline, which is also great. So if you've got objects that are stacked, you can copy or duplicate, and then just choose the order they appear before you paste them, instead of it coming up with its own freaking reasons. You can paste objects at the playhead position. The bar's real low, everybody. So you can paste objects that are in existing groups. Let's just call this. I just gotta. Tom, the menus, the menu layers, and maneuvering the menu layers is not the hell that it used to be. For IM stuff. I'm just saying. I can paste objects in groups now. So if there's a group, you don't have to ungroup everything to the point where it doesn't know what to ungroup anymore. Okay. Pasted objects respect the duration of the destination slide. So if I copy a button that's 30 seconds long and I put it in a slide that's 10 seconds long, it won't be a 30-second video all of a sudden.
Basically, what Storyline have done is they've implemented this incredible feature that no other platform has called copy and paste.
I know.
And
really
they are kind of chasing some of the truly bleeding edge software out there, like Microsoft Word. But you give them some credit. This is incredible new functionality.
You know what? You and I have been complaining about Captivate always. Storyline not putting any emphasis in basic quality of life.
Yes.
Now
credit where credit is due. Yeah, this is where their effort should be going. And we said this back when they got that massive investment at the start of the year, didn't we?
Yeah.
That actually Storyline doesn't need any more big feature releases. It needs to, I would say, perfect, but actually just make functional all the existing elements, because there's so much stuff that, let's be honest, as developers, we just avoid using.
Yeah.
So many things that could be useful, but that we just think, nope, not worth the time, not worth the effort.
Yeah. Paste special, so you can so it's now all done through like a paste special. So keep source duration, keep source start time. I love keep source start time. Keep source animations, which is great, and keep source triggers. Keep source triggers. I can migrate triggers. How is this hard?
This is it.
You can align objects to playhead. You can align objects to where the playhead's at, or to an object start, or to an object end, which is great. There's fit timeline to longest object. I like that, as opposed to just to end. You can fit it to right. So now you can fit it to the longest object. You can also reset the timeline to default, which I find useful. Well, that might not be useful with some of the paste, because some of the paste issues that I had was pasting something and having the time change But if they
Yes.
fix that, then I don't really need to reset to default too much. The other thing that's really nice is the timeline will now show seconds and frames, I think. Yeah, seconds and frames as opposed to just seconds. So I know exactly where I'm at. No, plain text shortcuts, that's too much. That's
Come
too
on,
much.
be reasonable. Be reasonable.
You can't do anything with text. Text is a whole new problem.
It's the one area in which Captivate outshines.
It is. No,
But,
there's a second one,
oh, go for
which
it.
is it's simulations, product simulations.
Okay, yeah, no, I'd agree with that. Yeah,
That's it though.
yeah. So here's a nice linking point from Heidi that came in a little while ago. If Google came out with an authoring tool, my Google Home would tell me, and I would immediately buy.
We noticed that
Oh
you're a learning
dear.
and instructional designer because you're listening to the ID update, which would be great, by the way. Would you like to buy? Actually, Google has purchased this. Actually, Google has signed you up for a 7-day free trial. One simple thing I like in Storyline Writing Tool is a brand color creation like Figma that auto changes all the colors that are the main palette color. Camtasia does that. I'm trying to remember if no, Captivate doesn't. You can do themes and masters, but they don't have like primary, secondary. They don't have things like that.
Do you know? But the interesting thing is that's something that Adapt and Evolve and Chameleon Creator and all those sort of web-based authoring tools implemented straight away. Create your theme.
Yeah.
You want to change the color of everything? Just change the color swatch that dominates everything. It's one of the reasons why I still think Adapt is the best authoring tool on the market. It's not the easiest authoring tool, but I do believe it is the best. I think the community support is outstanding. The recent updates have actually made it super, I would say super user-friendly compared to what it was. But if you want to get in under the hood, it is super easy to implement CSS buttons, even if you're just copying that from a freely available CSS library. But you just copy and paste it in. Try and put a CSS-themed button into Storyline. I'll see you in a few days.
Man, the second that any of the other main authoring tools bring CSS and even the concept, oh my god.
This is it. It's just
all bets are off.
Yeah.
I know where we're heading to, so I'm going to wash out my glass and open this beer. I'll be right back because I know
worries.
It's not.
So yeah, and I guess the last bit of the tech update really is because I know it's a conversation I had with a few people recently. Actual technology is getting cheaper again. Huzzah! Despite everything going on in the world, the chip shortage is starting to ease a little bit. Graphics cards are nearly available at retail price. CPUs are coming down in price incredibly quickly. There's loads of cool new stuff hitting the market. So we're almost at the point where we can maybe revisit how to build a kind of work-at-home computer system without kind of laughing when we talk about prices. But yes, no, I definitely agree, Phil, that's being able to just set up a color palette that carries across every element of your course in one place is so basic. And I mean, Storyline has like the color palettes in the same way that PowerPoint does, but it doesn't automatically change everything. And I think that's where it kind of falls down. And I think part of the reason those other tools become so popular, like Adapt and Evolve, is the fact that you set it in one place, and then if I tell it to make a button, I don't need to worry about what it's going to look like, because it's going to look like I told it all the buttons in this course need to look like. I never have to go, oh, there's an inconsistency between buttons in this section and that section, because there can't be an inconsistency. It's pulling from one source location. And incidentally, this is also why when you export to SCORM, those platforms produce much tidier, much more organized outputs that if you open up in a code inspector actually makes sense. Because it doesn't just repeat a billion different versions of blue button with drop shadow hover state. Whereas Storyline, of course, records every instance of that being used rather than one that it can just reference.
We're working for
Um,
email marketing platforms. So in HTML, what he's talking about specifically is called span. It's the span tag, where you have overlapping span tags that if you make a change, but you didn't put your cursor in the right spot or even move it in the right direction, to which I actually mean, we'll say this is a blank space and your cursor was here instead of here. That's a whole different tag it creates. Doesn't overwrite. Even if the space is not actually space, even if it's just the distance between two connecting letters, it's pretty dicey. Actually, if
so,
Storyline made up a code editor, I don't care about the text issues. If I can go into the text box and be like, I'm going to do the code editor and I'm going to get rid of all the extra crap that makes it so when I delete something, you revert back to a text format that was like 3 years ago, I'm going to be good. By the way, beer number 2, Sprecher out in Wisconsin, an Abbey triple, Belgian style.
Oh, very nice. Very nice indeed.
One of my favorite beer styles is Belgian. I love Belgian style ales.
Definitely, it's best drunk in Belgium, which one day we'll get back.
My dogs feel that way as well.
Just to say, the advert at the start was a joke, but thank you to the 2 people who have purchased ID Update pint glasses.
It's not a joke. You're actually selling things.
Totally was. But thank you very much. Thank you for supporting the channel. It's much appreciated.
I actually just started buying me a coffee with Decks and Drafts.
You have, yes.
I did. Yes, I gave it a shot. Just so the issue that people had with Patreon and supporting was that it's a subscription model, and it's not just a commitment, but people have gotten really smart with subscriptions to know that subscriptions are too easily forgotten.
Yes.
To a point where you never remember, what you have, and it's kind of a pain in the ass to go and find them. So they don't like to do it. So Buy Me a Coffee is a great middle ground, and it kind of doubles as a merch shop.
Yep, you can do that. As weird because your merch is you hold physical stock, don't you? You've got
yeah.
I floated that idea, and it's like, and where exactly is this going to be stored? Because this sort of from here onwards in my office is pile of boxes, pile of books, stuff waiting to leave the office, huge overfull bookcase. So not going to happen. But yes, thank you for supporting the channel. I appreciate it very much. We're gonna have like some proper YouTuber on the go videos next week from Learning Tech, where I'm gonna hopefully shove cameras in people's faces and go, "Why are you trying to sell this shit to people?" No, it will be more of a kind of "What are you getting from the conference?" vibe. I'm sure there'll also be the obligatory "What free stuff did I manage to nick?" video as well.
I'm going to transition into our last topic by saying I'm really thinking about bringing back Training as Blank. Which is a podcast not a podcast, it was a blog I started about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I just didn't give myself the time because I found myself just getting too busy. And the thing that was holding me back was getting a full-time job. And I got turned down for the job that I was very high in the running for. And I felt so good about getting turned down that I was like, maybe, I do some sides and I bring back Training as Blank.
Is this the one you were talking about on Facebook?
This was. So yeah, I had a series of interviews. And we're going to preface this by, I've been doing a lot of freelance stuff. I had a position. I've been bouncing around. Funny thing, if anybody follows this channel, it almost feels like every episode I'm talking about a new employment opportunity of mine. It's getting rather depressing, to the point where I kind of did a solid reflection of it and was like, something bigger is going on. And that leads to where we are now. So I could have announced a very well-known social media platform. I could have been starting as an e-learning developer for them. And I didn't get the position. And I felt so good after that. I was like, hey, maybe maybe I use the force that I would have failed there for good. And that leads into the conversation about workforce trauma. Let's make it sad. Toast to happiness.
Just before we do that, though, thank you to York and Dorkin for following us on Twitch.
Oh, I'm gonna need 2 sips on that one. I forgot, following an IPA with a Belgian, it's like all the hops are gone.
That's a big jump. That's
now it's
like
just whiskey.
Yeah.
Yay!
Nice. So yeah, this is interesting because I think we're in 2 slightly different places as we go into this topic.
Yeah, this will be fun.
Yeah. So
Fun
so I was just going to say, everyone in the chat, do get involved in this topic because I think, as much as I know we've both got stuff to say on it, it's one of those topics where I think when it gets spoken about, usually it's a very, I don't know, positive affirmation quotey post that kind of makes me want to scream at my phone and throw it away because it's just someone being very, I don't know, like my post about it. Let's put it that way. Yeah, exactly.
I can't whistle.
Rather than acknowledging that actually it's not about cheering up.
Yeah, Yorkin, this is going to be fun. This is gonna be fun. So I wrote a post, and actually, so I'm gonna double that effort. Please get involved because I wrote a post on LinkedIn that I'm still terrified about. The original version of it was much more visceral. Like I really felt like I was committing career suicide in the original version of it. But the suggestion that I've made, and I'm looking at this as I'm reflecting on my career in instructional design, and I'm looking at the couple of the past interviews that I've had. One of the struggles that I had with this particular, the company that would have been great, by the way, we're talking 6-figure job, very, very well known, job security would have been fantastic. And it was a basic e-learning developer position. It wasn't even instructional design. I was actually just assembling things. But talking to the people who were interviewing me and learning about what was being requested of me had me just struggling of, is this the standard you're holding? And I started comparing it to the other 5 companies that I've worked for in the past 3 years for e-learning, be them contract or not, that I ended up leaving and being like, is there an issue with fit? Or were the goalposts moved so much in every single situation that there was no winning? And that's when I started to think about the industry as a whole. And that's when I posed the question, is L&D an abusive industry? Are we dooming employees for, is the industry in dooming employees for failure and then hiding behind the vague description of its job definitions and what it does to convince and gaslight good talent that they're the problem? And the conversations have been great around that. But that is one of those things that you look at and it feels like workforce trauma. So for me, I'm going to go through a very quick. I've had positions where more often than not, the reason I was hired was the reason I left. I came in as the fresh eyes, especially in COVID, right? A lot of companies needed a training team all of a sudden because they went virtual. They didn't have virtual training before. They had the in-person training, but now you can't be in the office. And the person who did the normal training was Bob, we didn't hire enough people, so he could just take a day and do it. But now you need somebody who can turn those assets into virtual. But the job descriptions were never clear. What we do and what we bring and what we add to the value was never clear. So all these new jobs show up with all these different standards of what we do. We joke around what an instructional designer does. It changes every week. So I'd find all of these positions. I'd come in with the new perspective. I have experience as an instructional designer, and I'd come in and I would be like, here's some things to change. You want to talk about some tangible results? Here's how you get them. Do you even know if your training is working? Or is it just there and that's all that matters? Which is not my philosophy, but that was a problem. Do you care about aesthetic? Do you care about the quality of your work? Or do you just want me to recreate a PowerPoint and vomit it out with some sort of AI generated copy? I could do that, but I'm getting paid a lot more for that. And that's not what you asked me in the interview. Those aren't the standards that I was held to when I was brought on board. Why are those the standards you're forcing me into now? That's been my last 3 years. And I've got to a point where I'm tired of explaining and saying that the reason that things didn't work was because it just wasn't a good fit. I've said that so many times. And like, have we doomed ourselves for failure by as a ID industry not defining what the hell we do and not standing up for it? That's where I'm at. That's how this conversation begins.
See, I think that's interesting because similarly this week I got into some debates. I would do two, but I'm holding a pint glass and that's dangerous.
Here, wait. Do yours?
Oh, debates.
Debates.
That week.
Oh no! And it kicked him off. Hi, everybody. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-bum. Oh no.
We're still here, don't worry. We've just switched sides.
Whatever. Wait a second. Talk about some AI stuff. Melon, what happened? Did you just recognize our double quotes and just kick Tom off?
I think that may have been my network situation's fault. I'm halfway through a network upgrade in the house, halfway through being a very dangerous time to run a live stream, it turns out. So yes,
but
anyway,
timing was just perfect. It was just
it was
debates.
That's fantastic.
Boom, Tom goes down. Like, oh no,
fantastic.
Yeah. Anyway, you were just having some debates. We won't do the quotes again. That clearly didn't
some
work.
Debates. That's it. I was having some debates, and one of my points, the initial conversation was actually around I want to be an instructional designer. I'm a teacher, want to be an instructional designer. Blah blah blah. What software tools do I need to learn? And I said what I always said. I said that's not. You're asking a question about you want to be a developer, and that's cool. Developers are awesome. And developers, I would suggest looking at these things. But if you want to be an instructional designer, I would suggest looking at these things. They are not the same thing.
You're basically asking, which pedal is the go pedal I want to drive for NASCAR?
This is it.
Nope.
And I feel like that approach, which is being pushed by a lot of people, mostly who want to make money out of it, but not all of them, which is, learn a bit, learn enough to bumble your way through an interview, couple of keywords, micro learning, pedagogy, all whatever, and then learn storyline and you'll get a job, because that's what an instructional designer does. And the more that is what enters the industry, and the more that people in the surrounding world promote that as how to get into the industry, that becomes what the job is, and therefore it becomes the expectation. And I would, like, for instance, I had it recently, as an ID, you'll do this. It's like, no, it's not what I do. And I deal with it day in, day out, a fundamental misunderstanding of what different job roles are. And I've never experienced it in any other industry. Like, there's always role creep, because everyone does stuff that's technically not their job. That's not an issue, I don't think.
Yeah, no, that should be the norm. That should be expected. And all things considered, it should be a good thing to a point, because you grow.
Exactly. You get to try new things. I'm not talking about you do your boss's job for them. I'm talking about when they go on holiday, they allow you to run the team for a couple of weeks to gain some experience in a leadership role. Whatever that might be.
I've been learning about a ton of project management to the point where I've kind of fallen in love with it. I'm looking at getting certification for it.
And let me tell you, we need good project managers because there is a dramatic shortage of them in the world. But all that aside, I think our industry does take it to an extreme where there is just no universal shared understanding of what the hell an ID does versus a developer versus an LXD versus a learning architect versus a learning designer versus all these terms that we have.
Right.
And I think
I'm
this
switching over
is
to Twitch also. I gotta say hi to Yorkin. Yorkin, I'm coming for you. I'm gonna be Funny Ways 3 on there.
awesome. Well,
So you know.
yes, I see you have commented a lot, which is awesome. I think it's there we go. Well, thank you for being so active in the chat. I feel bad. You're like that. Whoa, so we've got 2 viewers on Twitch. 2 viewers on Twitch.
I'm not there yet, so I'm coming though.
That'll be 3. I'll have to screenshot this. This is the most active Twitch has ever been. I suppose, in fairness, it's a platform full of video games and exciting stuff exploding, and we're here going instructional design and technology.
Yeah,
but yeah, but to me, that is a big part of how our industry has become this kind of. I don't want to say the industry is toxic, because it's not. The industry is full of fantastic people. But I would say there is a disproportionate level of burnout, and obviously workplace trauma is not something I'd really heard of prior to you discussing it. But
I'll talk about symptoms in a sec, because I got introduced to the term a couple weeks ago. But
this is it. But certainly burnout, like, it's everywhere in our industry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always being talked about, and you don't realize how that's not the case everywhere else till you speak to people outside the industry, and everyone's just like, sorry, what? And I feel like part of it is that lack of definition, and part of it is then simultaneously so much of our industry, so much of us are here because we feel so incredibly strongly and passionately about doing this, and therefore we put up with it.
Yeah. A couple notes there. One, the other thing in our industry, I think that is important to understand that no other industry can say, is that anybody can do our job. They can do our tasks. Mm-hmm. Many people have put together a PowerPoint. Many people have shown somebody the ropes. Many people have taught people something. We're one of the few that actually take it to the level that people maybe don't comprehend, but we also haven't exactly educated the other people very well in what the heck we bring. I can't, software engineers don't have the problem where somebody can just halfway software engineer something. You can't halfway code something. But we're something, we're such a necessity that everybody kind of knows how to do it. It's like trying to explain why your Kleenex is better. It's like everybody knows what the basics are, and they've all shopped it. They all kind of Frankenstein a version of it. What makes you so special? That's the struggle that we had. Here are the symptoms for emotional trauma, for workforce trauma: absenteeism, poor presenteeism, task avoidance, employee conflicts, accidents, loss of motivation. Many of those symptoms are also attributed to burnout. And the reason I took the two apart, because for a long time I felt like I was struggling with burnout. And I did a lot of research on burnout. And I was like, man, maybe I'm just burned out. And I didn't think about trauma, because trauma is often associated with one single incident. Workforce trauma is often associated with, I'm afraid to come into the office because there was a shooting there, or somebody died there, or I was harassed in one job, so I'm afraid to have blank situations.
Yeah.
What isn't talked about with trauma is the concept of chronic trauma, which is a long stretch of trending things that attack you in a similar way, that come after, like for me, it's a crisis in confidence. The last 3 years have been a crisis in confidence, where I show up and this is what you're expected to do. And I even got to do those things. And I was crucified for some of them. And I'm not saying I'm the perfect employee. But what I am saying is that the domino where I kind of sucked wasn't the first one. A lot of things led to, I'm not gonna lie, I do have some task avoidance issues. I am much quicker to conflict than I used to be. I'm much more stubborn, and I can look back and be like, man, this comes from over and over going into positions where I was hired to be the game changer. I was hired to be the instructional designer who can think things through, a project manager who knew his stuff. Oh God, don't get me started on, we love your graphic design work. How would you like to do all of that with no resources and time? But over and over and over and over and over and over.
I mean, on that
a bad fit. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, on that note, how often do you hear this? When people introduce you to their L&D team, the L&D team here are amazing. They make magic happen. They create something out of nothing. They work on incredibly short timescales. It's incredible what these people manage to do. As if somehow all this is good stuff. And what we should actually be saying is, hi, here's the L&D team. We treat them terribly and don't respect their time.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting.
Phil, let's look at the chat. I'm a workload. Oh, actually, let's start with Heidi up at the top.
Oh, okay. Let's go Heidi first. There we go.
Oh, I've been so on my story. I haven't watched the thing. Having this conversation with people, we've determined we could get people willing to define the field and roles, but knew the bad marketers would always be louder. Let's talk about academies.
Well, they can say exciting stuff because it doesn't have to be based on fact. That's the thing, is there's not so much bad marketers. Liars will be louder. I can guarantee you a 6-figure salary using these 10 tips.
The thing that's wild is that you don't even need to lie. You can Google the basics, and you can get a recruiter to send you to the second interview.
Very true.
Let's do this one. Show of hands, everybody. How many people have looked at job interviews where they ask for Captivate and storyline knowledge in the job description, when you know nobody in their right mind ever uses both?
And then you get there and they're actually using something completely different.
Yeah, must know ADDIE, must know Agile, must know. It's a Google it's a Wikipedia page of things that never go together in a single job. Yeah. That are thrown out there in the job description, and the recruiter, who is usually not an L&D, and that to be fair, that's a thing. That's just what they're given. That's the standard that we're held to. That sucks. Yeah, see?
Yes, I'd say certainly over here in the UK, the similar thing is on every job spec, you see something like must have a level 5 CIPD qualification or equivalent experience. Equivalent experience, by my estimation, being about 3 days in the job. Having done those qualifications, yeah, you know.
The fact that so many people say, like, when you're looking for a new job, feel free to aim higher than what you think you're qualified for, because you never know what you're going to get. ID, unfortunately, is like the prime example of that.
The trouble is, those people can get jobs like the head of L&D surprisingly easily in some organizations. Like the number of L&D managers that you speak to and they do not know what way is up when it comes to actually doing anything is terrifying.
And this leads to where I think my problems started. It's not just people who can get L&D roles. I found myself in a lot of startups. And now I actually have a rule to basically ignore startups. Who hires an L&D professional in their startup? Nobody. Not a soul. That's not in the budget. Yeah. There are better things in the budget. Who's the first L&D person you hire in a startup if you don't have the budget? The first one to make the FAQs. The one who made the knowledge base. Yeah. The one who was good enough at making those documents that they functioned for the 7, 8, 20, 30 people who were there. They become your L&D manager. And I again, come after my LinkedIn. Come after me on this one. Joseph Senart, bring it on. SENART. I'm not afraid to call out that there is enough nepotism and there's enough, you are our training manager because you did this right. Can you build a training program? And they're hiring people who have no clue what the heck they're doing. And then they look for, well, what's the job that we need to hire to really ramp this up? Instructional designers. Then they hire that person, and wait, that person wasn't just a yes person who confirmed everything that we did. The age of resignation is moving into L&D because of the disconnect between managers, companies, and the people doing the work. You and I not argue, we complain all the time that people don't understand what we do. The first section was people not understanding what we do.
This is it. Let's just take we've got a lot of comments coming in, so I just want to make sure we take a look at some of these.
Sorry, I'm going to calm down the passion because this has literally been the last 2 weeks of my mental state, and I've got a beer and a half in me.
I think this is a good conversation. So, Luke, the workload, can be toxic in our industry rather than the people. I would agree with that. I think there are people in the industry that cause issues. But I think that's no more so than any other industry. I think we can't absolve the human element of this. But yeah, I think certainly the workload in our industry is a little extreme at times. Phil, I think great point. It's a prime example of having enough of being L&D strategy and creation roles after a full career, and then moving into product because he was so frustrated in the learning sector, and that's what I'm actually most worried about in this topic. Outside of the immediate kind of me, my friends, things, this thing, as an industry, we need to be quite worried that if we create this environment, good talent will be able to move industries without great difficulty. One of the things that we always say, you have to learn a lot of different skills to last long in L&D. Well, that also means you've learned a lot of skills. That means you can do something else.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big danger for us right now.
Let's start. I'm going to jump into a quick high note on that. Hey, L&D guys who are listening to this thing and suddenly concerned about your industry, you are the most hireable person for so many things. You just don't know it. You really are. You're fantastic at project management. You're great at change management, most likely. Like the ones who've been doing this for a while, you've got those two things covered. Chances are you might have some people management skills down. You definitely have creation and aesthetics down. You might not know the interfaces for other things, but you know how to work with a brand. You absolutely do. And you know that more than most graphic designers who are going to come in and think that they can change things.
A few more. So,
not to kick everybody out of the industry. This is like a call for like, hey, we all need to step the hell up and stop accepting garbage. But
yeah, it's more a warning that people can move. If the environment becomes too toxic, we will lose the best people in the industry because they won't because they can do other things. So I think great example here. Chronic trauma of repeatedly experienced micro challenges and conflicts. I think it wears us all down, right? Like not so long ago, I was the guy going, learning, we need to do it properly. We need to always put our best foot forward. It's about the people. It's about the this. And now I do find myself just going, it's good enough.
Version 1 is better than version none. The sweet cry of surrender.
This is it. This is it. I always used to rail against the, it's good enough, launch it approach. But there comes a point where in some situations, what do you do? When you literally feel like you've got multiple rounds in a ring with this project and various people in it, how long do you do that? And at what point do you just go, send it out the door?
Yes. I'm going to jump in version 1 and version none. I have a question for you, and I've got a question for the group. Too often, one of the job requirements is an understanding of Agile. And Agile is a version 1 is better than version none methodology because there's always time for version 2. But training doesn't give you time for version 2. Notoriously for me, training has never given me version 2. Version 1 is better than version none, so that way in Agile, version 1 can point out the flaws as well as the successes that lead to a better version 2. And then those flaws and successes give you a better version 3, which is less agile and actually more of a SAM model. SAM has a lot more, try to get your first guess to be the best one. But yeah, I'm wondering if part of that is this maybe that's just me. is just so much agile. I work a lot at tech companies. By the way, I work for a ton of, my specialty is product application and SaaS training, software as a service training. So we're always agile. I know that there are educators out there and those in HR and compliance trainers, they might not have that.
Yeah. Let us know what you think about agile. We'll come back to it. Just because we're starting to run away with comments, but there are loads of really good ones here. I want to get through all of them. So Joseph says, first thing he asks the recruiter, did they mean Camtasia instead of Captivate? Because the recruiter never has a goddamn clue. I definitely agree with that. Here we go. You're looking again. And yes, there's a difference between ID and IDD. Everyone is expected to be an IDD. Yeah, you're right. I think if you've got that skill set, you can be fine with it. But what happens is that scripting and true instructional design quality gets less attention. And I think that for me is my big concern. I see lots of very talented developers now calling themselves instructional designers. And part of me is sad that somehow they're doing it because instructional designer is a better job title than developer. And it's not. Like, development is freaking cool.
Right?
And that used to be acknowledged. Now it's almost seen as like this lesser palette of skills. Like a great developer, like I think it's like magic. Like, I'm always in awe of a genuinely talented developer and what they can do. I don't think it's inherently true that a good instructional designer can't be a good developer. I do think it's a real stretch for someone to try and learn both at the outset of their career. You're not going to be great at either if you try and learn both on day one. Let's, I guess, put it that way. Who needs to know stuff when there is a strategy? Yep, this is true. We are very obsessed with strategy. And hello, Morgan. Thanks for joining us.
I had to add to that of like recognizing a strategy is a real trick.
That's here we go. This is you. In fact, I'm going to ignore your comments.
That's fine. I'm easily ignored.
This is a very good point, Andre. This has turned into a support group. This has always been a support group. You guys just haven't known it.
Right? Let me bring out my Apple products real quick.
We will talk Apple at the very end of the show.
Ooh.
I am furious beyond words.
Ooh, okay. All right. Let's see. Well,
we'll get there.
Save that.
That we can finish off on that, because then those that don't want to hear my fury can just leave, having heard the good topic. So what have we got here? Joe Suarez, in some orgs, L&D is little more than a stepping stone for HR professionals. I've seen recruiters become IDs and BAs become training directors. This is... Yeah.
Who made the FAQ? Hey, Bob. Good job on that Word doc.
And this...
Like training director.
Yeah. Whenever anyone asks me about my beef with CIPD... this is it.
Yeah, that's it.
CIPD is the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. Notice how personnel comes first. HR is what they are good at. They are run by HR people. They are not run by training, learning, and development people. And yet somehow we are held to their low standards as what the industry in the UK should be judged on. So, yeah. But we won't do a whole video about my hatred for the CIPD.
Back to your other point. If the industry came together and set a degree of standard like the Agile Manifesto did, Emily, God, yes. Oh, put that on the screen, Phil. That's what it needs to be. And we need to stick up for that. The people who've been doing this for a while, the ones who have been... I'll even take your master's degree. I'll take your understanding of methodology, as long as it's backed by some actual doing the work.
Yeah.
God, we need to L&D. We need to stand up for the value that we bring, instead of it's done so it's good enough. Because I feel like even before the last 3 years, trying to show value as an instructional designer to those who just don't see the world our way was such an uphill battle. Like we're thinking about, where is the audience at this point in time? They came here for what reason? How do we ensure that they actually learn something? How do we adjust the order of content, the way that we put it in, the way that they engage with it, when we're constantly just getting asked, is it done? Did you make it? I don't really care what's on it. It's just there. I need to point people to somebody so I don't have to repeat it. That's not what our job should be. I love this quote. That's the bumper sticker.
Absolutely. I think Phil then did say, bad time to bring up Agile. It probably wasn't the best time because that's when we just stated Agile, but it is an example of industry experts actually making something better. I think that's true. And I don't think Agile is inherently bad. I think I have yet to see or work with any L&D function or business for that matter that even understands Agile when they're talking about it, let alone does it well.
I've never worked for product application companies never seen Agile done right. You know how you fix Agile in a product software development company? It's called DevOps. Because the issue with Agile is Agile says the Agile model is we're going to create a wheel, but if you start with a triangle, that's fine. And then we're going to learn that maybe we needed to make it a square, and then maybe you needed to make it a hexagon, and eventually you get to the wheel. What DevOps says is, hey, all that talk about the wheel, what the hell did you use the wheel for to begin with? Because Agile kind of skips that part of the conversation.
Yeah.
It skips the why and the logical understanding. It looks at what is it, where do we need to get to, and then we're going to just make stuff to get there. That's kind of why I like SAM, by the way. I'm a big champion of SAM.
Absolutely. I think
I love SAM for L&D. And DevOps kind of goes that way. It says, hey, you've got all these cooks in the kitchen that are doing their random crap. How about they all get together to figure out what they need, how they're going to get there, and what the challenges are before you start making things.
And to me, that's my my beef with Agile, as it were, is it creates the feeling of lots of shit getting done, but the problem is lots of shit is getting done. And the yes, we'll fix it later attitude is fine if you fix it later, but no one does.
Again, version 1 is better than version none.
Yeah.
And never does somebody look at version 2.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
in L&D. Not when so many companies out there are like, hey, you've got training. We can point people to it, right? This is good. This is fine.
And here are some examples of that.
Thing.
Linnea, I feel like Agile is often just someone asking for fast and cheap. Morgan, a lot of times Agile is interpreted as the right to change your mind whenever, for whatever reason.
Oh my God, right?
I always use the example of, we are going to completely fail to define your role in this project. You'll just do stuff as and when we say so.
I want to call it Jorgen's comment real quick. Actually, when you feel meh, that's such a sad feeling.
Yes.
Because I think that's where we're at. I think all of that, everything that I've talked about, that's where this lands for me. Who's proud of the work they make when the goalposts move in L&D? Yeah. But all the stakeholders are like, this is great. This is awesome. We're glad you're there. And me as the instructional designer who's done this for a decade has been like, I abandoned so many things to get to this point. And now I don't even get to come back to it.
Yeah.
That sucks. No wonder people are burned out and want to leave.
That's it.
Who wants to be mediocre at their job while everybody thinks that's amazing? Nobody. I know you don't.
No,
gosh,
I think that's,
as somebody who looks at IM and the stuff that IM does, that production quality is incredible. Like, I'm proud of the work that gets done there, but if that was just like, can you just turn that into a PowerPoint with stick figures? This is fine. As long as I don't have to do the meeting that covers this content, it doesn't really matter how good it is.
This is it. And I think even then, I think it's we're in a weird space where even if your particular role or the work you're working on right now is exactly what you want to be doing, when you do a kind of heads up moment and look at your industry, the industry in which you work, how do you feel about your industry is weirdly important, because that's what people, for instance, know when they say, so what do you do for a living? Like, we all make a joke about, no one ever knows what I do when I say I'm an instructional designer. That's actually a little bit, uh,
So you know the way that I
you
explain
know?
that? Because I actually came up with a really good way to explain that. I do instructional design. This is how my wife explains it now. I don't know why I keep doing this. This is how my wife explains it. Your husband's an instructional designer. What does that mean? You know those trainings that you take? He's the man behind the curtain. And that's it.
And then they want to like beat you with a stick, right? That's that's the problem.
We don't get that far.
But yeah, it's fine to a point, but at the same time, like, I don't, because that's exactly what I did, for instance, with my wife's side of the family, because I don't care enough to explain to them. To be clear, I'm not horrible. They are. I'm joking.
I've got dogs going. I'll be right back.
Go for it. But it's a lot to have to constantly explain what it is you do, when what, you know, you can never really define well what we do in our industry. When you go, oh, so you just do e-learning? It's like, no, I read and I write and I do all these different things, and it all sounds very simple taken individually, but we do a lot. I think a lot more than a lot of people do in a lot of industries. Let's have a look at some more comments while we're waiting for Joey to come back. Heidi, I worked at some place where people just stopped taking courses when they stopped working and didn't even tell anyone. I uncovered 5 courses that didn't work. Yeah, I think we've probably we've probably all seen situations like that, right? Just what was it? Phil wrote something about it. The Ghost Town LMS, I think, was the blog you wrote, wasn't it, Phil? About a kind of similar topic. Phil himself there, actually. This is a great chat with wine, cheese, ham, and crackers. Well, I've just got beer, so sadly, I'm not quite as fancy as you, but I'm glad you're enjoying the chat. That's not the most eloquent quote, but I'm glad it resonated. And yeah, it did. I think that's so often viewed as, because it's just a case of whatever, I'm done. It's kind of seems, oh well, that's not that bad. It's like, well, actually, if you really care about what you do, that's terrible, because it's not the moment. It's not that moment that actually hurts. It's the acknowledgement of going from the, it's got to be done right and I'm proud of what I do, to the, fuck it, just send it out the door. It's that travel that is the hurtful piece, not the actual position you find yourself in. But hey,
it just, I'm trying to think of the last time that I did a project that I was proud of, because and I hate, because the challenge with that, and this is the conflict portion, is because people just stayed the hell out of my way. Yeah. Like, let me do what I do. And I'm trying to think of the last time I really got to do that. And I actually hilariously, I have one. And it's the the project that got me fired. Which was mind-blowing. It was a year ago. I did a project where I had to onboard partners. I had to come up with a partner onboarding training. So we had people go into the platform. We created a whole system in the platform that they could go into, and basically we had them recreate. I wrote a story. Here's the use case of a client who's going to come to you. Here are the tasks. Here's why they ask you to do this task. It's now your job to replicate that task. Here are the exact step-by-steps to do that the first time. The second time, you're on your own, and we're going to make it harder. Loved it. We even had survey data to back it up. We even said, like, how confident were you in doing these tasks at the beginning? That was the pre-survey, which, by the way, pre-surveys need to be a thing. And then we did a post of how confident are you now? So I actually had tangible data evidence that, I had tangible statistics. Loved it. Got to train Merkel. Yeah, I don't need to spell it. Merkel. It was a big company, big agency, big marketing agency. It was
Cool.
great. They loved the heck out of it. It was a 2-month project. Came back to my training team because I didn't do that for my training team, mind you. I did that actually for the person in charge of onboarding partners who is not a part of the training team.
Mm.
Came back to the training team and says, let's show you all the great things. Let's show you how this resonated. And I got terminated because they didn't want to do that level of product training. My job as a product trainer.
This is it.
That sucked. But I was proud of that. I want to be proud of things. We got to be proud of things, guys. I don't necessarily want to make this just a support group of things. There's got to be a tangible thing, which is stand the hell up. And I don't know if it's a matter of doing more blogs. I don't know if it's literally a matter of going to recruiters, like the ones who are looking for jobs like myself, and be like, hey, recruiter, let's explain to you why your job description was wrong. Which all things considered is code for we need to come up with really good questions to ask in interviews. Which Devlin Peck just did a whole thing about that. Our buddy DP, of questions to ask, processes and tracking results and things like that.
He did also just do a video about how to get a 6-figure salary, though.
Huh?
He did also just do a video about how to get a 6-figure salary.
Yeah, no, it's easy. Don't work in the UK.
In fairness, that does seem like a very good starting point.
That's a real good start.
Literally, it's one of the questions that I want to ask everyone that I meet at Learning Tech next week. And, are you on a 6-figure salary? Are you on a 6-figure salary? It's going to be a whole video of people just laughing at me.
Right?
But yeah.
So I want to call it a comment in there. Philip says, summary of L&D, do it cheap and fast. Sure. Why didn't it work? Duh. That's a big batch of duh. But here's the question. Here's the follow-up to you, Phil. Feel free to respond. If there's no accountability, who cares if it didn't work? Which product owners and stakeholders are looking for the survey data outside of, did you enjoy the training? Would you recommend it to a friend? What are their metrics? It's why my favorite question to ask during scoping isn't what do people need to learn, but what goes wrong if our training sucks? Because that's the actual metric that those stakeholders can look at and be like, I have to keep going to meetings. How many meetings did you go to talk about the stuff I just talked about? Did that number drop? My training was good.
Yeah, this is it. It's real basic stuff, but it's fun enough. It goes right back to what we were talking about before. If the job's not being done well by everyone, we all start to suffer. Because we're just fundamentally not measuring the success. Therefore, we can't say we're good at our jobs because we just kind of think we are. That's, you can't just tell a business, I am good.
Yeah.
You have to... you have to be able to deliver. Oh, now we know who York and Dorkin is. Marvellous. That makes...
Okay, awesome. Hi, Allie.
It's been a very long time. We hope you're well. But yeah, I think it's... This is one of those real just big, tricky, cumbersome issues, isn't it?
So I guess the question that I would have for you, I'll have it for the chat. Everybody in the room, okay? Because now I've had my fun complaining about the problems. But complaining over problems doesn't mean anything. I've worked in support. It doesn't mean anything. Saying something doesn't work doesn't get you anywhere. So what's the solve? What are the things that if I could have a conversation with a company that said, this is what a training team does, that you might not have thought about when you hired it, what do you miss? What do they miss? What do you preach?
See, I was going to say the fix was that the industry should quit and just go and live in the woods. But
you'll be project managers. You are all great project managers. You just don't know it.
Certainly a lot better than the people usually managing your project.
This is actually a project management style, is the waterfall.
Absolutely. Does that mean you can get away with taking that to meetings?
I don't want to
I'm,
keep the can in the
I,
room.
I'm, ju- I'm just keeping the waterfall to hand. Um,
I'll have a steady stream of this before interviews.
that's it.
That's why I think L&D gets beaten down to the point where they leave the company or don't care, because that's the cycle they have to deal with. Damn
Yeah.
straight. Which goes back to my workforce trauma question of, have we confused that term so much that we leave a company knowing we're good, but so convinced that we were the problem?
Certainly, certain issue, or indeed the inverse. I think there's a lot of, I assume I'm very good at what I do,
Yeah.
but I have no evidence to back that up.
Okay, that's fair. I'll give you that.
That's,
I'll give you that.
I think, but equally, I don't necessarily blame those people for that all the time, because especially now, people are not being given the necessary, when I say equipment, I mean knowledge, skills, and actual equipment to find out whether or not they're good.
I got a certification from wherever. You can make one right now. The IDU cert. You have watched our channel once. You've watched 2 hours of our channel. You've learned everything you need to know.
You are IDT certified instructional designers. Congratulations. We'll send you out a digital badge to put on your LinkedIn tomorrow. You know, I feel like that kind of approach.
You can buy it from Buy Me a Coffee. It comes free with a pint glass and a bag of chips.
Absolutely.
Remember the old UPCs? Like from cereal boxes? Like, turn in 3 UPCs from ID Update Gear and get a free certificate to instructional design.
This is it. That's but yeah, there's such a fundamental lacking of that proof of skill, proof of delivery in the industry, that both for those of us who are good but can't prove it, and are bad and need it proved but don't see it, those two things combine, I think, to create a very blind working environment where only small pockets of people actually have realistic understandings of how good or bad or effective or not their last thing was. And them as a professional, how good or not good they are at what they do at the moment.
Let me ask you this question. This is going to be a real dark one. Do you think part of the answer might just be, how about we lower our standards?
I think it's...
How about we get off of pick your andragogy, pick your methodology, pick your graph that everybody uses, and cookie cutter that? Maybe, what are your thoughts on maybe we're overthinking the problem? Trust me, that's dark, and I really don't want that to be like an answer, but like,
I think there are two sides to that, because I'm a big advocate for the argument of L&D needs to get off its ego horse.
Yes.
Learning is sacred and important, and everyone should care about it, because they shouldn't, and it's not. Going back to earlier, businesses exist to make money. There is no other reason for the business to exist. It doesn't care whether the people are actually learning. It cares whether the people can make them money. Yes. That is what L&D exists to do. L&D does not exist to help people learn or to teach or to expand knowledge. L&D exists to facilitate a business making more money. We have to embrace that. Or go and work in higher education, where the purpose is the expansion of knowledge and learning, and that's cool. If that's what you want to do, go and do that. Unfortunately, that world has its own problems, but the business world does not and should not care about learning, education, any of that stuff. Businesses exist to make money. That is how they are able to employ people. Collectively, we have chosen to live in a capitalist world, and unless L&D is going to start waving the red flag and dragging people out to the guillotine, which I'm not poo-pooing that idea, But I assume, broadly speaking, we are going to not do that. We're probably going to go down the route of embrace what we're actually here to do rather than what we think we're here to do.
Would
We're
you
not
like
there to lead
parents out there that call out crap when they see it?
Sorry?
Would you like more caras out there that call out crap when we see it? Because if you look on ID, it's all, we are definitely the support system, but we don't exactly call ourselves out on lower standards. Which she did with the Academy stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly think as an industry, we have to take a more honest look at ourselves. We need to be able to look back and say 60% of what our industry creates is bullshit.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
We created an industry around learning styles and we still cling to it now. Do you know how many L&D teams roll out psychometric analysis as part of some bollocks management development process with no understanding of what it is, how it works, and what it's actually telling them?
I mean, we know Intel just did.
Well, exactly. We are the department telling businesses invest in VR. It's the future of training, despite all the evidence saying there is no tangible benefit or value here. We do have to be honest about that.
What that means we needed to be doing is, as the seasoned group, we need to start telling people that their portfolios are bad. Not just, but that's not where you end naturally. It's like, here's what needs to change. And I'll ask you directly, how many times have you seen a templated portfolio in the last 6 months? I know
you don't have to ask me this. I'm on record with this. I've moaned about this in so many videos. I have despaired of the state of portfolios and CVs because you can tell which online academy people went to by their CV and portfolio.
Right.
And it's so depressing. And it got to the point where I didn't necessarily go, I'm not going to hire anyone that's been to any of them. But I kind of said, I'm going to interview someone who has a portfolio that I cannot immediately tell which one it's come from. That's where I had to set the bar.
Oh, no.
Like, it's depressingly low. And like there are other things like the market right now, I think we'd all agree, is buoyant, to say the least. Those of us working on day rates or freelance work or small businesses, we know right now we are in the high point of what we're able to charge. Therefore, the freelance market especially is busy. I'm not going to use the word flooded because that indicates there's not enough work to go around. But there's plenty of work. But I do think that has an impact in the quality of entrance. Let's put it that way. There is an eagerness to get in there and get started and make money rather than get good at this because it's what I want to be doing in 20 years' time.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, also, the portfolio doesn't exactly show you the ID stuff. So would you start requiring a use case?
Oh, like that was the thing with mine. If someone's sorry, Karen.
I was going to say, like, that was the thing with mine. And anybody who watches this, who wants to know how to do a portfolio right, throw all of the academies away. Throw them away. Go talk to Kath Ellis. Go to her. The end.
Yeah. Because I'll be honest, I don't actually care whether I get to do your course. What I want to know is, what was the challenge or what was the problem in the business? What was your approach? And what did you create that actually fixed it? And what happened thereafter? Did it work?
Yeah.
If you can then only show me 2 or 3 like snapshots of the course, fine, not a problem. Yeah. I don't actually care about that bit. If I'm hiring you as an instructional designer, if I'm hiring you as a developer, I want to see your development skills. That's fair enough. But if I'm hiring you as an ID, I actually don't care. I want to see your actual process of challenge, thought pattern, solution, results. Without that, no chance.
That's one of the things I have to appreciate about the job that I just got turned down for, was that they made it an e-learning developer position because they knew they didn't care about that.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to see my storyline. They wanted to see my rise. Like, they wanted to see my ability. But for anybody who's ID, if that's what they want to see, your follow-up question needs to be, what's your actual process for creating training? And you need that thorough. If it's, we work with SMEs and we assemble things, congrats, you have a developer position that you're not an ID. But that's what I learned, actually, exactly what you just said, of the use case. That was also a great way for me to get around the IP problems that I had, because I'm working for companies that I can't exactly share the training that I created for them, which is another very common question. How do I create a portfolio when half of my stuff is behind a paywall? You don't. You create a use case and you talk about the challenge and the results and everything that you just said. And then you show a picture of their logo for all they care. You don't have to show the training.
No, that's absolutely
I
true.
want to see more of that. CV more like a project management simulator. That is correct. You were correct. IDs often hand off storyboards. Devs are often given storyboards. Portfolios should match that. Oh, dude. Put that on a bumper sticker. Put that on a poster.
This is it. It's but it's the same as when, and this is the one that I see a lot at the minute. I am an instructional designer, e-learning developer, animator, graphic designer, and project manager. So, are you? Oh my, that's an incredible set of skills. You should have my job. Oh no, sorry. You can use some downloadable templates. You've got a Canva account, and you own a Vyond license.
Me and Canva have a hate relationship.
I don't hate Canva, but you have to acknowledge Canva for what it is. What Canva is a very small, overpriced template library.
Yes.
It is not a graphic design tool. It is a template library. Template libraries are awesome. Unfortunately, as mentioned, the Canva template library is small and overpriced. What I would say is go and buy like a license to Envato Elements for like whatever it is a month, 20 quid or whatever. It's my platform of choice anyway for all things everything. Like today, I'm finally going to put out some IDT stuff. I decided I wanted a new start, like the little screen at the beginning, because the one I've got's awful, but I just haven't been bothered to change it for so long. And so I went and looked at some templates, downloaded one, put my text in, and now I've got a new startup for the videos. It's simple stuff like that that those platforms are good for. Does that make me a motion graphics designer? No.
So the thing that's funny about my hate with Canva has everything to do with my degree. So my degree is in graphic design, by the way. I have a Bachelor of Arts in graphic design. But my Bachelor of Arts in graphic design came in 2006. And the reason that matters is because of what happened 5 years before. 9/11, 2001. 5 years is when anybody who is still trying to dangle by a thread because the economy crashed at 9/11, we're done. And the first ones to go, marketing and training. Those are the two that go away. Those are the two departments that go away first. They are the most expendable than the actual function of the business. So what happens? Let's take a quick journey. All of those people who are gone are now creating their own businesses, especially the marketers. They're creating their own businesses because they can't go to big companies. Those companies all shut down. Well, what do all those businesses need? Logos, corporate identities, branding, all of that. It's great for my business, graphic design. It's also great for your Office Maxes, Office Depots, Staples, your office supply depots that have room for a desk, as well as any company that can create hundreds of thousands of logos on the fly to all of these people who need a cheap solution because they're unemployed to make themselves look different. The relevancy of graphic design is what killed graphic design. Graphic design spent so much time and effort trying to prove its relevancy into the world that it created a business that made it so easily accessible that the talent and value went away. My job as a graphic designer could be done for $20 at Office Depot. You go online and you can find work, and you can bid on work as a graphic designer for logos and whatnot. It's a race to the bottom. It's a race to the bottom. It's a 15-year-old who has Photoshop, and that's my struggle with Canva. Is that it's essentially the same thing. It throws away, what does this mean? What do the colors that you chose mean? What does your font mean in typography? What is the message that you're sending? Why are you using serif? If you're trying to be modern, nobody modern would use serifs in a font unless you're trying to send a very specific message, which is usually something that's time tested, usually something that is stable, something that is secure and structured. If you're trying to be trendy and fun, you use the sans serifs. There's a whole lot of rules and things that I learned in college, just like L&D, that don't mean anything in practice when we dumb down our industry to, is it done? Is it out there? And that's what Canva does. That's what Canva's created. And it just... Sorry, that's my little Canva rant. Episode not sponsored by Canva. Melanap, you're good.
I think. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think that's... Yeah.
But that's also a dick move. Let me pull back on that and be like, by using Canva, I'm not saying that you suck. I'm not saying that you're terrible. I'm just saying it's like, there's a lot of things that don't come into consideration that I really wish that Canva educated you on. Why did you pick these colors? Why are you doing red and green together? Don't do that. Stop. They're complementary. Not complimentary.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Huh?
They're inaccessible because of the red-green color blindness.
Yeah. I got it. Now I'm literally Googling color wheel relationships because it's been that freaking long. No, I think it was complimentary.
Red and green complementary?
Oh, that was the wrong graphic to look at.
Yeah,
complimentary.
Yeah. Says Phil agrees with you. I always forget Phil's done so many cool things now. Yeah, low contrast. You're right, Joseph. That's spot on. But yeah, Phil used to be trained to be a graphic designer as well. Phil does really cool graphic design stuff. So he was responsible for. Did you ever see the old Evolve Learning Design branding with like the little orange character fighting the dragon in front of the castle? So he did all of that design work. So hats off to Phil's work there, and there's design for all the IDTX 2022 stuff actually. So all the t-shirt designs and the logo stuff.
Right. Also print digital, different jerks. Yeah. Use muted colors, jackasses. Unless you're going to only look at it for 2 seconds, get off of your bold and pure stuff.
And also, don't design in RGB and then go, why does this look so different on paper? Literally had that this week. Couldn't stop laughing. Someone I had someone that I know print a massive stand banner for the Learning Tech conference and then go, these aren't our colours, they've printed it wrong. And it's like, did you change over your colour palette in Illustrator? What do you mean? Let me explain.
I've got a funny story for everybody. God, we're just going. I've got a funny story for you.
Why not?
This is great. So the context here, which is a detail that this person didn't know, is that my degree is in graphic design. I've done it for 15 years. Okay. This guy doesn't know that. One of the common things when you're doing an instruction, or not instructional design, when you're doing a training interview where somebody's facilitating, one of the steps is very often meet with the team and train us on something. Give us a 15-minute thing or something. Just train us on anything you want. This is at Epsilon. Again, remember the context. So we get this guy who comes in and he gives us his the thing that he trains us. The topic of his training was how to design things based off of what you found on the internet and make it look like your own. He literally taught He literally was trying to show people how to steal
Oh,
stuff on the internet and tweak it just a little bit so it looked like it was your idea. And me, the
nice.
graphic designer of 15 years, who has a background, and it's like, I can't wait for the Q&A part of this show.
But here's an interesting question. How was the training?
Awful. It
Oh,
was
okay.
miserable.
I see. I so wanted it to be a terrible topic, trained incredibly well. Like that would have been a real
No.
kind of. Do you give this person the job? Like it's.
All right. So let's be all right. Actually, oh, okay. I'm sorry. Let's be fair to your question, not my perspective.
Hmm.
The training was great.
Ah, you see.
That's fair. That's fair. I've got to give you that. The training was great because he asked questions. He asked, he like showed us kind of a before and after, and can you find the similarities and the differences? Can you see, if we were to do this versus this, would that, be something a little bit like he asked questions and the training was composed well and he had good energy. And then I asked him basic, general, fundamental questions about graphic design, and it all went to hell. And it started with the thing that you stole. I use that word. The thing you stole. Why was that good to begin with? And that was the end of the interview. Okay. He could not get anywhere from that.
It's interesting. It's funny you bring out that story because I didn't pick quite such a questionable topic, but I did that exact interview and I did it in front of Phil, who was in the chat many moons ago, and that was interesting. Especially as on entry to the room, Phil assumed I was an IT trainer, so that was fun.
Actually, I want to ask the community. I'm going to share mine also. I want to ask the community if you ever had to do teach anybody anything. If your interview process was teach the team something, I'm curious what you taught them. I'd like to know. I think it'd be fun. My entry into L&D was teaching a bunch of executives and C-level people how to code HTML. I didn't know there were C-level people in the room when I came up with that topic. But you know how I started? I made him play Simon Says. We played a game of Simon Says. I took the intimidation factor out and I said, Simon Says, raise your hand. I did the whole game of Simon Says, which was sad when only one person actually survived the game of Simon Says.
I mean, they're C-level people. They have no actual skills. Like,
to be fair, I tricked them. They didn't know when the game was over. They all assumed when the game was over.
Yeah.
So they all should have still been doing something. But I made it very simple. If you understand the game of Simon Says, you understand the basics of HTML. Simon says something, do something. In HTML, we call this a tag. And you do that tag until Simon says stop. We put that tag with a slash. That's how it looks. You rinse, lather, and repeat over and over. And the complexities are simply knowing what the heck Simon is telling you to do. Sometimes Simon says, go over there, which is CSS. And by the end of 15 minutes, they knew how to code. Basics, but they knew how to code. That was my first. That was my first interview in L&D.
Nice.
It was fun. I was amazed that only one person survived. I was like, your tie is worth more than me.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. My first ever interview for L&D was me calling an area manager saying the stuff you have sent to my store is garbage. Could I please fix it? And the response was, "Oh my god, yes, please."
Wow!
So it was like,
good job.
Great. So that was, but I think that's when people say, "How do you get started in L&D?" That's always my response. It's like, stop looking for a new job and look for something to fix in your existing job. Because that way you can learn, you can completely mess it up and say, well, it's not my job. I was just having a go. I was helping you out.
That'd be a fun question.
Yeah.
Hey, instructional designer, when you decided to go into instructional design, what was the thing you were the worst on? What did you think you sucked at the most? And I want to see how many people say the software.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
That'd be an interesting question. I'm going to do that as a poll. That's going to be a LinkedIn poll. Look down on my
Okay.
LinkedIn. Joseph Senart. I'm going to make a poll. When you decided to go into ID, what was the thing you thought you were the worst at?
And I think this is interesting because this is why I have a little bit of a bias towards getting into the L&D world as a trainer, not an instructional designer. Because then software is a non-element. There is no software involved in designing great training experiences.
Yeah. I'm
Um,
with you on that.
but if you've got those skills, fundamentally, designing a good workshop, designing good learning applies equally to that versus. I will tell the story, Phil, don't worry. And you can correct me when I gloss over how not that great I was.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
all right. I got the job. Let's put it that way. I got the job. Low bar, but I got the job. But yeah, I think a lot of those skills transfer, and I think this obsession with I want to go from nothing to instructional designer is fundamentally unsound because the focus then unfortunately is placed in software and technology. Because the instructional designer developer roles have been so pushed together, whereas trainer still sat over here with nothing to do with it.
I like that.
I find that interesting.
I like that. That's kind of like you can basically, my personal philosophy is if you can do retail management, you can do anything. Same
Funny you
idea.
say that. I was a retail manager before I went into ID. Before I went
5
into
years.
L&D, rather.
5 years retail management. That was my tour duty.
I didn't do that long, Christ. I think I'd have stabbed people. I think people
I did
now
2
quite
years
shocked
at GameStop.
when I said, "Oh yeah, I managed people." People are like, "Sorry, what?" It's like, and why did you? And then people go, "So why did you get into L&D?" I decided to get into L&D because of employees being upset when they weren't making enough money because of insufficient training. I, as a manager, had to sit across from people who were crying because they couldn't afford to eat.
Yeah.
But that's a very human reason, and this is me.
You get really good at teaching people how to be good at their job when they know if they can't be good at their job, they can't eat.
This is it.
Like, I'm sorry. Like,
You know, if you want to
corporate
look for
American
the
life
good in
sucks.
what we do, that's when I talk about making people competent at their job. Competent people keep their jobs. People who keep their jobs can feed themselves, keep their home, hopefully stay warm, depending on energy prices. And maybe have a bit of a life if they're lucky. But yeah, Phil wants me to tell the story. So anyway, this was for a big water company here in the UK. Because why wouldn't you privatise your water system? It's not like it's essential to life. And private companies are known for running these things well. But that aside.
Yeah, we'll talk about one of these days. You and I will talk about Texas and their electrical system. What happens when they get a blizzard?
Well,
But that's
exactly.
another story.
So I've gone for a pre-interview at this point. Where we've done and have you done your CIPDs? Yes, I've done my CIPDs. Yes, I've done that. And do you know the meanings of these 5 words? Yes, I know the meanings of these 5 words.
Have you done 7 Hail Marys?
Pretty much, yeah. So I've got through to the second interview, and I've got to go and train people on something. And I choose to train something that I had done a bit before, and it was it was a cycle of some sort that I'm now actually not that keen on. I forget what it's called. It's effectively like a positive thought equals positive action thing.
Okay.
How to split up your day, manage your time, turn a big, difficult day into small, achievable tasks. Set up this workshop, went in there and ran it, got lots of questions. Phil immediately assumed I was an IT trainer because I had a beard, long hair, and a suit. As opposed to the previous guy who I assume walked in like a hoodie with a knife or something. I don't know. We do live in Swindon. But yeah, so I went in there, ran that, didn't run it particularly well. Largely because, if I'm honest, it was just a really odd environment. Running a face-to-face training session of people and it being an interview is just weird. Like my memory of that session is not great. But there was a character. There was like Neil, Neil had a whole list of shit to do, including stuff that his wife was just like tagging on, and his annoying manager was kind of just tagging on. Little did I know, this was literally the workplace I was then applying to go into. Like, so he's got this terrible employer who just throws more work at him with no respect for his personal time. It stood in front of these people that must just have been thinking, "Why do you want to come and work here? You think that's terrible?" But
we never do trainings about a work environment.
Yeah, but anyway, come the end of it, do some questioning and all this kind of thing, and evidently, Phil liked me enough to say yes, we should probably give Tom the job. Certainly compared maybe to the other person, the belief cycle. That was it. I talked about the belief cycle. It was.
I know. I'm familiar with that. I'm vaguely familiar with that.
Yeah, it was fine. It's easy content to create a workshop on when you've got to create a workshop in a week and all that kind of thing. And you had to, but for the interview, you had to obviously put your slides together. If you're using slides, it needed to be an interactive session, so you need some sort of way to engage. You had to put together a facilitator guide, which you also had to give it to them, submit it, so that they had your materials. Now,
if you're really spicy, you do a participants guide as well.
This is it. I was not doing that.
Okay, that's fine. They'll learn on their own.
Yeah, this is it. It's they're fine. I'm not big on participants guides, if I'm honest, but yeah. So it went well.
Topic.
Yeah. Only later on did I find out the person that I was interviewing at the same time that someone already in the business and kind of working on the team also interviewed for the job. Okay. So I then started in this lovely job with that person still there.
Oh no.
Only like 3 months later did I find this out. So I was kind of being chummy and friendly and trying to build a relationship, and this person was always just that little bit off. He didn't like me very much. And part of me feels bad, but another part of me thinks he wasn't very pleasant, and I don't feel that bad for him, really. But thanks for sticking around. We've run massively over. Please don't feel bad if you have to go. We're just
remember when this podcast was an hour. Remember when we tried that? We've never had an hour.
Yeah, I remember when we said it was going to be an hour. I think an hour and 3/4 is about as short as we've ever got it. Let's round this up. Anyway, long story short, got the job. Slightly awkward start. Great job. Terrible place. Obviously loved working with Phil. Learned a lot. Moved on. Doing better things now. Anyway,
I think that's about where I'm at with mine. It was a great job. No, I can't. You know what? I can't even give it a terrible place. I have to put my failure at Constant Contact on me. I struggled in that job. It was my first corporate job, and before that, it was all customer support. And that's was a conversation tricky, right? That making that switch from customer support and talking to them in one way versus talking to executives and C-level, I didn't make the transition very well. I didn't know what to do, and I failed. I hard failed. But the company was great. I really enjoyed the company. At least. I own my mistakes.
Absolutely. So,
it looks like you're growing your Patreon.
Yeah. So, I figured we sold some pint glasses, so why not go full shill? If you would like to support the channel, you can do so for as little as £1 a month on Patreon. So any support would be appreciated, but that is going to be the show for tonight.
Yeah, so, way the heck. You know, I didn't expect the data one to go as long as we did.
I know, right? Data was a bigger convo than I thought.
But yeah, as we roll into May. Sorry, that was a cough.
No, absolutely. So, but thank you everyone for joining us, for staying with us. For making Twitch worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you, Twitch. Thank you,
this was This was well worth it. Thank you for everyone joining us on YouTube, getting involved in the chat, and we will of course see you next month. But there is actually going to be some content coming out on the channel in the meantime, and I figured rather than our usual ID update bumper, we'd finish with the new kind of intro stinger for the Instructional Design Tips YouTube channel.
Wait, what? You got a new thing?
Absolutely. So we will play that as our outro. It's been a pleasure. We shall speak to you next month.
And subscribe if you haven't. He's at 13. He's at 988. You gained 1. And
Hey!
wait a second. Wait. No, you can't leave yet.
Oh.
Happy 100 videos.
What?
This is your, I don't know. I think this is your 100th video.
No.
I'm looking at your channel right now. 988 subscribers, 100 videos.
I had no. How have we done that many videos? That's slightly terrifying.
We're a 10th of that. Well, congratulations. And I hope that next time we get to celebrate. I hope we get to celebrate 1,000 next time, 1,000 subscribers. Thank you all so much for joining. I'll let Tom have the final word because this is his thing. And he's got a new intro. Or outro. New outro. Make me look
Bye.
Good. Cheers.
There's your final word.